Counselors, you good? Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Thursday, January 11th, 2018. I'd like to call the Council as a whole committee to order. With us this evening, we have with us Councilors Walsh, Clark, Caddy, Zarella, Boschman, Squalia, Green, DiNatale, Fleming, and myself, Kushmerek. At this time, I'd ask any members of the public who are with us, who are doing an audio or a video recording, to please identify themselves by name for the record, both name and address.
Elizabeth Dobbins, Sentinel Web Enterprise. Address, I don't live here, but.
Is there any other member wishing to record? Okay, we also have Fitchburg Access Television this evening, who is live streaming and recording tonight's meeting. At this time, I'm going to recognize Councilor Zarella before we begin tonight's meeting. Councilor Zarella.
I believe firmly, after consultation with both City Solicitor and the State Ethics Board, that there is no substance to the allegation that I have a conflict of interest as a result of my father's company on Main Street. However, given that I do not wish to have any shadow or taint of impropriety upon this deliberation tonight, I will be recusing myself pending a formal determination by the State Ethics Commission.
Thank you, Councilor Zarella. At this time, before we begin, there's a sign-in sheet at the table. I'm going to ask that anyone who speaks this evening from the public, I'd ask you before you begin speaking if you could simply print your name legibly as well as your address. This is for the public record. This is so I won't make you spell your name out publicly each time before we begin. And before, we will have a public forum this evening so that the members of the audience who are here with us this evening will have an opportunity to speak. From the council's perspective, you will have our attention and our respect as you speak, and in return, I ask for the same. I'd ask all members of the public to hold their discussion, applause, or comment until the end of the meeting, until the council has adjourned. And I would also ask for your respect as well. Ask all members to refrain from any disrespectful behavior. If you fail to comply with that, I'll be asking you to leave this evening. That said, differences of opinion are always a good thing. That's productive for a city, that's productive for any legislative body. So I welcome your comments this evening, but again, I ask to keep them respectful and productive. You'll have 2 minutes for public comment. I'll be keeping a timer on my cell phone this evening. At 2 minutes, I'll point to my watch, and quickly thereafter, I'd ask that you finish your final comment and end. If it goes much beyond there, I'll be asking that we cut off the microphone. That said, we have 3 items on the agenda. We're going to begin with a public forum. Allow all members of the public to speak first. We'll then proceed into the 3 matters that are before the council this evening for councilors only to deliberate. There'll be a presentation from the mayor and several department heads on the orders that follow. That said, we'll begin with the public forum. Anyone wishing to speak may do so for not more than 2 minutes. Good evening.
Shall I sign in first?
Yes, if you would.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Sam Blair. I'm with the Historical Commission, and I'll be very brief. I just want to express our very strong support for the renovation of City Hall. We've been pushing for this for years and years, and in spite of a lot of goodwill from many quarters, nothing ever seemed to come together. And now things really do seem to be coming together. The feasibility report seems to be very well thought out and moderate in its recommendations and based on reality. And I think it would be such a boost to Main Street and to the city at large if we could just show that we still believe in our city enough to support this renovation of City Hall. I think it would be a big boost. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Delfeld, I believe. Good evening.
Good evening.
May I
Hello.
organize a queue for the sheet?
Hi. It's hard to see everybody at the table. I'm always very nervous, so sorry if I stumble at all. I first want to thank Councilor Zarella for his, for the propriety. And I appreciate that he responded to my request. That was very noble. There's business groups that are going to profit from this, and there's City Hall employees who are going to benefit from the City Hall renovation. The problem is that they're not fully the ones paying for it. I mentioned this before, that businesses will be reducing the amount that they're actually put into tax levy. So we have to listen to the people. Right now, the people who own property, that's the basic money that's coming in. That's 77% now, and it's going to go up. It's going to be about 83% from my guess, once the tax rate equals out and once the property tax assessments are finished. This is a huge amount that's being put on the back of people. Now, I look around the room and I know a lot of people's opinions about this. I know which side they fall. And I also know that I've seen that a lot of people who are very wealthy do want City Hall. And a lot of people who are not so wealthy, like me, don't, because the burden is much greater on me for taxes, much greater. If I had lots of money, I wouldn't actually mind contributing, but I don't. So this is the way things are for the majority of people in Fitchburg. I would like that to be considered, that it's numbers as well as money. There is a question of dignity of Main Street with a new City Hall. We are a city with dignity. And one of the things that you need for dignity is to respond to the financial burdens that you have. We have B.F. Brown, we have Longsjo, we have Crocker, we have the high school, we have Rheingold. These are all things that have fallen apart in the last couple of days, in the last couple of years. And we need to take care of those too. The library is being completely ignored. The $6 million is not going to be enough for the basic repairs that are needed. And we need to address that too. That's where we get dignity from. The past has kind of caught up with us, and it's going to shove us into the future, whether we like it or not. So I'd like you to just cancel this $24 million City Hall renovation. I'd like you to come back to it maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years. We have the money to pay for it without driving us into debt. We don't need to use debt to make ourselves feel better. We need to do it to solve problems that are immediate. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to call attention, there's a sign-in sheet going around with our Assistant City Solicitor, Christine Tree, in red in the back of the room, to sign in and begin the queue. Good evening.
Laurie Grover, Ward 6, Fitchburg. I've lived in Fitchburg for 32 years. I don't get any local papers. I don't watch FATV. My only exposure to what is happening in the city is what I see on Facebook. And so I was surprised to hear about this bond initiative. I don't have any children in the school system at this point in time. My only child is 24 years old and in the graduate program at Fitchburg State. So I don't have any personal interest myself in the schools, but I do have an interest in the children of Fitchburg, you know, even though they're not my family. You know, I think it's fiscally irresponsible to embark on this kind of adventure without tending to our basic needs of the children of the city. You know, I would love to see a new city hall. But at this cost, I don't think it's fiscally responsible. I think to repair and replace what's absolutely necessary to create a workable structure that is a benefit to the citizens is appropriate, but not at this expense. Our children deserve to go to school where they don't have to bring blankets to stay warm. They don't have to worry about puddles of water in the hallway. They don't have to worry about all these other things that I read about in the news, on the Fitchburg sites and stuff. But that's, you know, that's my point. And I think it needs more discussion amongst the taxpayers. You know, these are our tax dollars, and we deserve a a word about how it's spent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ask the next person in queue. Thank you.
I put Christine in charge. She excels at that.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's David Streb, 377 Highland Avenue. I am a taxpayer and a resident of the city. I used to work in City Hall, and I'm pleased that the renovation of that building is about to get underway. It's about time. It's been sitting empty for far too long. It's an ugly mark in the center of our city, and it will be good for our civic image to bring it back. We need investment and economic activity in our city, and the proposed government campus will be an important part of that. Moreover, it's directly across the street from the Fitchburg Theater Building, where Fitchburg State University has made a significant and important commitment to fix and bring life back to that space. They've already begun the process, and it's critical that the city support them. I get aggravated when I hear people argue that we can't afford to have a renovated city hall because our schools need work. Why do people assume we can't have both? I support new school building projects. I want our schools to be in good repair. I think schools are absolutely critical to the well-being of any community. But I also want a renovated city hall that I can be proud of. Why do we as a city always sell ourselves short? Maintenance and upkeep of all of our buildings have got to be properly funded within operating budgets. Maintenance is not a capital item and cannot be bonded. At the public hearing in November, the city auditor showed us that the city can manage the renovation of City Hall within the budget, even with another school capital project and renovations to the library included. Although we are a bit short on the library, I do want to point that out. But I urge you to proceed forthwith with this important project and to ensure going forwards that City Hall and all of the city buildings are properly maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Whitney.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I make a suggestion before we start? We can't hear a word you're saying it down there,
Okay.
okay? If you could at least speak a little bit louder, I'll try to speak louder. As you know, I'm a former mayor, and I have spent quite a bit of time in City Hall. And I love the City Hall, but at this point, if you're gonna do an option that we're gonna renovate it, I have a few questions as to renovating it. How can you renovate a building that is as old as that without actually letting some of it go, which I'm not sure that if that isn't what they have suggested. First of all, let's begin with the basement. What's in the basement? Are we renovating the basement? Are we just gonna build over the basement? Because there's a lot of vaults and there's a lot of records and things in that basement. And it was disgusting to go down in the basement 20 years ago when I was there. I can imagine what it's like now. I just feel as though that this is $22 million that should be either option, do you hang on to it, tear down it, do it in phases? I would suggest you do it in phases and take down what is needed to be taken down and work on phases rather than the mayor has got a new building across next to it. If that's the way to go, then do it piecemeal if you have to. But to renovate a building that has been that old and it has been almost in disarray for many, many years. It's not just that it's just recently. It's been many, many years that it's been disarray. And I think this is something that's very important to spend that kind of money to rehab a building that maybe, I'm gonna just 5 years, 10 years, you're gonna have the same situation as we have right now. Because to rehab something is okay if you're gonna destroy everything that's there right now. I am in favor of keeping the front of the building because that's part of the city's historical society and so Fitchburg's society here, and we need to keep that, which it can be done. It has been done before. You can keep that part of the building and then start building and do it in piecemeal if that's an option that you would consider. To do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then eventually we would have a new building, completely new building versus renovation. My concern is that I have been there so long that it is really a building that should be torn down and start from scratch rather than than rehabbing anything. And $22 million is a lot of money to rehab a building, which we really should consider doing something with. But it's something that, I know you've had committees, I know that people have been on committees, but I mean, I don't know if anybody even considered this. But how are you gonna go ahead and what are you doing, where are you putting the vaults, and are the vaults that are there gonna stay? What are we doing with the present building now? If that's what the option is, I am almost partially against it. I think my option would say, do it in phases. Don't start with $22 million and have the same thing happen in 5 to 10 years, which is rehabbing that again. So I would suggest that you think about phases, and I would suggest that you please tear it down rather than spending that kind of money. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is Susan Navarre.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I'm going to try to speak loudly as Mary did so that everybody can hear. My name is Susan Navarre. I'm the executive director of the 125-year-old Fitchburg Historical Society, which is located at 781 Main Street. I'm speaking here today to represent our board and our members who are Fitchburg residents and business people. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. We study Fitchburg's history every day, and we want to remind the community that the historic City Hall is one of Main Street's most prominent and significant landmarks. It's also an important anchor for Fitchburg's commercial center. Fitchburg has a really unique architectural heritage that includes excellent examples of architecture from throughout the 1800s. And sometimes I think we forget how rare it is to have an example of this kind of pre-Civil War building, and especially to have it set with other later commercial structures. But Fitchburg is really lucky to have inherited such an attractive historic downtown district. And the building has an important history, but even more important is what the building can mean for us now. If it's used for city offices, that will keep the building busy and active. Most Fitchburg residents will have a reason to come there at least once a year, and they're more likely to stay and run errands on Main Street. Because the Fitchburg Historical Society walks the walk every day by operating in a renovated historic building that we've purchased and invested in right in downtown. We're a nonprofit, but we're a business too. We spend money and we need to earn money like any other business. And like our neighboring businesses and like all of Fitchburg's citizens, we will benefit from a lively and active Main Street, and we'll suffer from an empty Main Street. In fact, cities all over America have invested in the preservation of their historic downtowns, and they're reaping the benefits in the form of economic growth, new jobs, new businesses, increased property values, and improved quality of life. I think many of the people here have probably visited cities like Asheville, North Carolina, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Grand Rapids, Michigan, or Cooperstown, New York, or they've heard about their preservation successes. And closer to home, they may have heard about cities like Northampton, North Adams, Providence, and Lowell that are all nationally recognized for the growth that they have that is bringing activity back to their historic downtowns.
Ms. Navarre, I'd ask you to conclude your comments.
Okay, thank you. Fitchburg is built because of important infrastructure like the railroads, and I think right now we also have an infrastructure challenge. The preservation of City Hall and the return of the functions to Main Street will bring immediate improvements to Main Street, but also long-term economic benefits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Georgie Rodriguez.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and everyone in attendance. My name is Georgie Rodriguez. I've been a resident of the city for over 32 years, since Bernard Charlton was mayor. Do I believe in education? Of course I do. Who doesn't believe in education? A good percentage of our budget already goes to education, and I agree with the first exponent of opinions here that we could do many projects in conjunction with that. I believe that City Hall will be a great project and great benefit, not only to the city, but to all the constituents of cities around. Many projects have failed through the years. Many money has been wasted through the years in ideas that have not worked at all to bring alive downtown Fitchburg. The new City Hall will bring jobs, will bring new creations of endless opportunities to the constituents of the city, a better service with proper facilities so we don't have to be all jammed in a room like this. Most of the people will come to City Hall to conduct business, and they will stay in downtown, and they will visit the mom and pop shop, and they will visit the bank, and they will visit the library, and they will visit the cultural center, and so forth. Bringing the City Hall back will be the new heart that will bring infusion, will pump the blood that our downtown area needs. I believe that we'll be able to offer better services. We'll be able to have an opportunity to be part of the future. The time is now. We can't keep on waiting and waiting and waiting. I think that with new enterprises like the Fitchburg University, with the theater block, new businesses surrounding Boulder Drive, Main Street, I believe that the project will put Fitchburg once again in the map. And let it be known that the world will know that Fitchburg will be open for business again. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Andrew Van Hazings.
And Hazinga.
Hazinger.
That's all right.
So sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for holding this forum tonight. I wanted to point out that this meeting tonight is a great example about why we need a new city hall. That when we have important issues to talk about as a city, we don't have a meeting space. We're trying to cram a public forum into a middle school library, and this doesn't work. I mean, back there, I'm in a row of books, and you can barely hear what's going on. It's about 95 million degrees, and this is not a way to run a government. We need an effective meeting space. We need an effective offices where city employees can meet and work together rather than working in offices, in basements scattered around the city. I know the schools are important. They're important to me. I have 3 children at Crocker who are currently student refugees, but the city is already committed to replace that school, and it's just going through a different process. So I'd urge the city to move forward with the replacement of Crocker and get that done as soon as possible, but it's not an either-or proposition. We also need a city hall, and I encourage you to go forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Fontaine.
Good evening. I'm Paul Fontaine Jr., Vice Chair of the Fitchburg Planning Board. I'd like to read into the record a memo we had sent around. I think most of you have seen it, but our chair, I don't believe is here. I didn't see her, so I've taken the liberty just to, again, read it for the record. At its January 9th, 2018 meeting, members present excuse me, at the Fitchburg Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend funding the City Hall campus project, which is on the council's agenda tonight. While there is never an easy time to fund a capital improvement project, the development and relocation of City Hall to its historical location on Main Street comes at a time where there is substantial influx of funds in the area. With Fitchburg State's redevelopment of the Fitchburg Theater Block across the street, planned large-scale residential projects at B.F. Brown and the Harper Furniture Building, and numerous commercial units permitted or recently located on Main Street, the board believes that the city should continue this trend with the City Hall campus project. We believe that this could spur future economic activity in the area. Besides the possible beneficial economic impacts, the city needs a centralized location for municipal offices and meeting space, which currently are inadequate. Meeting space for city boards and commissions in close proximity to city council chambers, as it previously was at 718 Main Street, allows for council participation in public hearings, facilitating more complete decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Laura O'Kane. If I've misstated your name from the handwriting, please correct me.
Nope, you got it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say I firmly believe in the redevelopment of Fitchburg City Hall. I think it's key to the economic redevelopment of Main Street in Fitchburg. I believe it will spur a greater activity on Main Street, and I feel very strongly that your plan was well thought out. I'm comfortable with the funding, and I appreciate your efforts for this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Dohan?
Somebody adjust the mic so we can hear in the back.
Can we turn that speaker?
That's speakers for a couple of the counselors who. So I just remind all speakers wherever possible to try to project as best as you can. You know, at the risk of yelling at us, you know, so that everyone else can hear. You know, if you could raise your voice, that would be helpful to all those in attendance. Mr. Doan, good evening.
Thank you, councilors. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm Mark Doan. I work at New View Communities. New View Communities invested on Main Street at 470 Main Street when we redeveloped the TD Bank building there. We pay full taxes on our buildings. We're developing the B.F. Brown School and having a new city hall, a new theater at Fitchburg State University, and a new artist housing colony at B.F. Brown, all close to one another, will provide synergies between all of these projects. They support one another. They're all renovations of historic projects, and they'll help one another more as the sum of the more than the sum of the you know, as a whole, more than the sum of the parts. A new city hall shows that Fitchburg is investing in downtown. It shows that it's open for business, and downtown has a lot of vacancies. It's one of the tougher parts of the city because of all those vacancies. Many businesses have moved out of downtown, and the city should be helping to take the lead by investing itself in downtown to encourage other businesses to invest there as well. It will help reverse that trend, and it will help bring economic vitality to a part of the city that really needs it. Thank you very much, and I hope you'll support the renovation.
Thank you.
Sarah Dion?
Good evening.
I have nothing prepared, but I just want to say I'm not really for this right now for the City Hall. I totally appreciate the historical value of it. And I came from Lowell, so I can say that I did see it bustling as in my childhood to ghost town to it rose up, and it's wonderful down there. I don't see a correlation of having a new City Hall bringing businesses in. I don't see how they connect. What will bring people in, though, is a nice schools and a nice library. And I mean, I only see one school on here, and I just feel like with everything, the schools, and I know the weather played a huge role, but those are expenses that we need. And I think until our schools are up to par, then we can look at City Hall. I like the idea of the phases. I'm not against bringing it back. I would love it to be back. It's nice, at least from the outside. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dylan McNeil? I apologize if the last name is incorrect.
Hello, my name is Dylan McLean. I would just like to start off by saying, I started the last meeting off by saying I was a recent college graduate, and thinking about the idea of having a beautiful office to work in, you know, is of course on my agenda as well, and that, you know, certainly something that we all aspire to be. The focus on the schools being our major concern as a city, I think is probably just the icing on the cake. And that's also just within recent weeks of you guys battling the cold weather that many other schools have had to deal with. But altogether, you know, being a recent college graduate and already having, you know, that debt and thinking about owning a home and where I'd want to continue to grow myself and my future family, my children to go to school, I can't say I'd be investing in Fitchburg. You know, as great as it is and as much of opportunities as it's provided me, it wouldn't make sense to fiscally put ourselves into this position where we're maxing out our debt until 2045. And I think that the whole City Hall and revitalization of downtown Main Street is great, but we can't do that if we're strapped for cash and trying to income and bring people to raise our property values that are raising. And that's why people are seeing an increase in their taxes. Taxes haven't gone up, but home values have, because Fitchburg is a place right now where we've seen tremendous growth in home values, especially with the recent project down over in West Fitchburg of the tea coming in. I think that'll be great. And of course, the marijuana cultivation will add to you guys having financial cash and abilities to do so. But right now, we don't have all that extra income coming in. And we would benefit from just waiting 1 year and again, maybe putting the $1 million this year into Bank of America to start this off. So phases are great. But as far as we have about 4 or 5 banks on Main Street and people aren't going into them anymore. Everything's electronic. And I only imagine that my 1 year of visit to City Hall will become 0 visits to City Hall as soon as the government is able to put the money into infrastructure and maintenance of the networking to provide that opportunity to us. And, you guys definitely deserve it, but we also have to think of everybody else. And I thank you for your time in this commentary.
Thank you.
Ray Nascimento.
So, good evening. My name is Roy Nascimento. I'm President and CEO of the North Central Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you for holding this forum. Certainly, there's no shortage of need in the city. There's a lot of various needs and a lot of different expenses. A couple of thoughts to consider as you make this decision. First of all, you've gone through this process. You've hired a consultant. This City Hall has been vacant for, 6 or 7 years now. You brought in a professional consultant. You've discussed various options, tearing it down, moving to other locations. I think the consultant and the committee that was put together was very transparent and provided a number of different options. This seems to be the most affordable option. I think just ignoring the problem and just keeping City Hall vacant isn't a solution. I think that's going to just the building's going to continue to deteriorate, be a blight for the downtown. I think the city should be investing in the downtown and encouraging businesses to come into the community. And this is an important project. I think you have departments scattered throughout the city. That's not efficient. It's not good for residents. It's not good for businesses. And we think the schools are important as well. We're very engaged in the schools, and there's certainly needs there as well. But having a chained-up building on Main Street that represents the city, that is the City Hall, doesn't really send the right message as well to developers as well as new residents and people coming into the community. Thank you very much for hearing us out.
Thank you, sir.
Linda Colon.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I was here at the other meeting. Nothing has really changed. I just came up to support the city. Like I had said before, I have 3 kids in Longview Middle School, and the school is tearing down. I understand you guys need a place to work and comfortable. Well, my kids need a place to be comfortable too and feel safe. I send my kids to school, like I said last time, without not knowing if I'm gonna get a phone call that the ceiling has fallen. So I just feel that we all need to come to a point where what is important. Because yeah, you want people coming into the city, but like someone had said before, they're gonna bring families. And once they look at the schools, do you really think they're gonna want their kids here? Like, it's sad, but at the same time, I hear where you guys are coming from, but that's just a ridiculous amount of money to spend on a building that's gonna have the same problem. The school, right now where my kids is at, this has been happening for like, I wanna say since the 80s, I was told. So why aren't the hospitals falling down? Because there's maintenance on them. The schools are important, that's our future. And if we don't do anything to stop this, who will? I'm a parent, I'm a concerned parent, just like any of you are. If you ain't got kids, you probably have grandkids, you got nephews, nieces, you got family members that go to school. And I think that everyone wants a safe environment, just like you guys is looking to be comfortable where you guys work, same as the teachers. They're struggling. And it's not the it's not the weather, it's not the pipes bursting. It's been happening for years. So I just hope that you guys consider this. These kids are going through stuff too. They had to move school. Some don't know if they're gonna have a school one day, and it's just a concern. So, I'm done.
Thank you.
Linda Byrne.
Good evening.
Good evening. Familiar faces here. Since I was here 2 nights ago, so I'm going to be very brief. As you know, I'm in favor of a new city hall, and I believe that this is a very important thing for the city. But along with that, I think we have lost our spirit in some way. I think in terms of 25 years ago, when I was on the council, we, at that time, had a new police station. We got a new police station. We got a new fire station. We got a new high school. And times were tough. We always talked about the money. And you know, this is not an easy job because not everyone's going to like you at the end of this situation. But anyway, we got through it. We have all these buildings now. 25 years later, we're okay. And I think we're getting this fear factor in place. And I would hope that we'll just let it go. This is important that our city, we can't be running a business. One office is in a basement, another office is up in the senior center someplace. I mean, everybody's all over the place, and the city hall still should be city hall. It should be a place of respectable business for the city and the residents of Fitchburg. And that's all I have to say. And I would like to say I've distributed this little DVD to all of you. I'm involved with the Art Museum now, and anybody that's here that would like to see it we have them at the Art Museum. This is an inspiration to all of us. You look at this DVD and you see how beautiful our city is. We have there's so many beautiful monuments, buildings, etc. And not only that, but the woman who established the Art Museum is inspirational. She looked at a mill town. This is titled Masterpiece in a Mill Town. She looked at our mill town as being something special. And I think we should look at ourselves the same way. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Lewis. Paul Lewis.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I've heard a lot of, my name's Paul Lewis, by the way, and I'm from Fitchburg. I've been a resident since 1995 in this city. And tonight I've heard a lot of good points from both sides. Can't deny that. But at the end of the day, I think that this city project for City Hall should go forward. And I'm not really a public speaker, so that's all I have to say. I support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Capasso.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. President. I'm Nick Capasso. I'm the director of the Fitchburg Art Museum. And on behalf of the Art Museum, I'd like to express our strong support for the renovation of City Hall. This project will be proceeding in parallel with the renovations of the B.F. Brown Building, the Annex, the City Stables, and the Theater Block. These simultaneous projects will create transformative synergy for our downtown. Together, they'll create sustainable daily foot traffic, without which further investment on Main Street will not happen. These projects will also together save and repurpose 5 historical buildings important to the history of this city. They will also together raise Fitchburg's profile, dispel negative perceptions from outside of Fitchburg, and attract further investment. Fitchburg Art Museum has been working for several years with multiple partners in this city to realize this vision, and we urge the City Council to approve the funding mechanisms necessary to redevelop our City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christopher McDermott.
Thank
Thank you very much, councilors. My name is Christopher McDermott. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for the North Central Mass Chamber of Commerce and Development Corporation. As many of you are aware, the Development Corporation is the economic development wing of the Chamber, charged with promoting business growth and employment throughout the region. And we believe the heart of any community is a welcoming downtown, populated by storefronts and eateries, what you might call the living room of a community. However, these establishments depend on foot traffic to survive. Complementing Fitchburg State University's purchase of the theater block, this renovation will attract the professionals and the pedestrian activity necessary to maintain a vibrant, walkable Main Street. Adjacent establishments will benefit as municipal employees, residents, and individuals doing business in City Hall patronize their establishments. It will also encourage further investment and infill of vacant storefronts. Also, beyond these benefits, rehabilitating what is currently a vacant city block will go a far way to improving the image of downtown Fitchburg and aiding its perception as a welcoming and safe environment. For these reasons, the Development Corporation would like to support the Mayor's platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kelly Johnson?
Hi, Kelly Johnson, 168 Charles Street. I as well was here on Tuesday speaking on behalf. And as I spoke, I'd like to reiterate my point of Fitchburg being a family unit. Here we are, and I see this wonderful projection. I see the projected budget impact in 2018 would increase until the year 2039, when it would finally decrease. I do see 3 buildings currently on this projected budget, and as noted by a previous speaker, years ago we did 3 buildings as well. In that time that we've been paying the debt of those 3 buildings, there has been a lack of money for maintenance. We know this. There has been a lack of money for our unfunded liabilities that you all have been speaking so adamantly about for these past years. So these have been a budget struggle. They continue to be a budget struggle. So where we've done and worked on 3 buildings in the past 25 years, as it was stated, and now you continue to want to work on 3 buildings. We are leaving out, in fact, South Street Elementary, Rheingold, Longs Joe, which is in terrible condition. We've got Memorial, Fitchburg High School, McKay Campus, the Department of Public Works building, and the Senior Center. So I see the 3 buildings that had been done and the 3 buildings that want to be done, and I raise you and I tell you where our budget impact in 2018 will carry an increase until 2039. Where that this maintenance has been lacking, where are we talking about where this maintenance will fit into this budget if we're increasing all of these debts? A couple notes from speakers in the room from prior, complaining about the meeting space and everyone being at capacity and having to stand. I've been going to city council meetings for quite a long time, since in fact they were in the old city hall, and I can remember city hall meetings or city council meetings where people were actually out in the hallway and not even able to be in the building. I think that this room is in fact very comparable to that, so I see that as kind of a null point. And I'd just like to close with, if Longs Joe were a rental property, would the Board of Health condemn it and not allow people to live there? I just don't understand, how we're proposing all this funding and we haven't been able to maintain anything these past years as well.
Thank you.
Stacy Fenton?
Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking about City Hall and the petition, I'm a woman of a certain age here. Delaying the vote to fully air the issues, some have noted will raise the cost every time you delay, but I'd also note that the costs are going to rise on the school buildings which are in need of critical maintenance. So I don't believe there's a big loss there. There is no firm plan tonight that I hear in how the City Hall will grow our building, and it's not quantified. We hope, we expect, we believe. I do not hear anything that is quantifiable, any metrics. I'd like to see some more work done before we commit $23.5 million. I'd like to know what we're going to gain in the community. The gentleman from the planning board notes, even in his memo, it could spur economic development. The same memo notes, and the gentleman from Fitchburg Art Museum also notes, large-scale residential developments are coming in at both ends of downtown. Those mean families. Those mean children. They're going to need schools. We already know Longjo, I was at a school committee meeting in December. Every elementary middle school principal that presented said that space was a critical issue. Longjo is holding classes in the gym because they have run out of teachable space. We need to have a plan, and it's a plan that includes everyone. The wants and desires of folks who have a very fond memory of 718 Main Street and our children. Also close by noting that 1/3 of the counselors on this board have served in school committee in the recent past, but I'm going to note my particular disappointment that no one has chosen to champion our children. No one has said our children deserve decent schools. And I'm asking someone on this council tonight, regardless how the vote goes, pay attention to our schools, champion our schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rebecca Wilkerson.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'll be brief. I too was here on Tuesday. And I want to go with a different approach tonight. You've all heard the raw, the emotional pleas of parents, of teachers, of members of our community. You all know the numbers of what it's going to cost to repair, to rebuild, to do the schools, to do the library, to do City Hall. You all know that schools are in desperate need of attention and kids matter. You know that. So tonight I'm going to just provide you with a short quote. It's from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And in that, at the end of the movie, Professor Dumbledore awards points to Neville Longbottom. And with that, he says, "It takes a great deal of courage to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends." So tonight, members of the council, I would ask that you find it to stand up, to speak to each other, to challenge each other, and stand up for our kids, to stand up for the future of our community, and vote against City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah Jeffries.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Jeffries, and I've been a resident of Fitchburg for almost 55 years. I pay taxes, I'm not wealthy, and I want to renovate the City Hall. I'm a teacher in the Fitchburg Public Schools, and I've been a teacher for 31 years in Fitchburg, all of which have been at Crocker Elementary. And I have to thank you all for the support you have given and continue to give to us. I'm passionate about the schools, and I'm passionate about Fitchburg. I believe we need both projects. The new City Hall project will add to what has been happening in Fitchburg, revitalization. The college believes in Main Street. The city needs to believe in the future of Fitchburg. How can we expect others to come to our city and believe in the future if we don't? Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay Bry.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Jay Bry. I will try and get through this without losing my voice tonight. I'm the vice president at Fitchburg State University, but also the owner of 689 through 725 Main Street, known as the Theater Block. I also, as someone who, on nearly a daily basis, have to weigh the needs of many constituents and many priorities against limited resources. So I appreciate the difficult situation you all are facing, but give you and commend you for the outstanding job you've been doing on making this an open and transparent process. As most of you are aware, the university has purchased the theater block. This decision was not to purchase a building simply because of our space needs. It was as much about economic development and being a partner with the city on revitalization of the downtown. For those not familiar with the project, it's going to include academic space, community space, theater space, retail. The first phase has already begun. The first phase is going to include an idea lab, which will nurture students, faculty, and community members all working together. It will serve as a business center where we're partnering with NewView to provide small business support to members of the community looking to start a business in this community. The first phase is also going to include a game design lab. This is a place where our senior students taking the game design major will come to do their capstone project where they have to develop an actual game or app. In doing so, we can envision where that particular student could, at the same time, go across the hall to this idea lab to develop a plan to develop that game into an actual business, who could then eventually rent a space in the lower level or anywhere else in Fitchburg. This is not really a dream. This has actually just recently happened in Worcester with Becker College. It keeps the graduates here in Fitchburg. The future phases will then include that restoration of the first floor. It includes the restoration of the original 1,600-seat theater, bringing it back to a performing arts theater that would be open to the public for a variety of entertainment purposes in the heart of downtown Fitchburg. This renovation is a $25 million renovation. That would be transformative in of itself, and it's our commitment, but it's not enough by itself. It's why we also support the B.F. Brown project and the work that NewView and the Fitchburg Art Museum is doing to revitalize the downtown. But we strongly believe the restoration of Fitchburg City Hall is equally important to the broader vision of the downtown. Just like the university, this is much more than renovation of a building. It's the economic development and revitalization of the downtown. These three projects together will show this commitment to the investment in the city. As elected officials, you have an opportunity to lead by example. It's in addition to reclaiming a historic building, the restoration of City Hall will send a clear message that Fitchburg is a smart investment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Nikopoulos?
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Linda Nicolopoulos. I live at 140 Pleasant Street in Fitchburg. I live right behind Longjo Middle School. I am within eyesight of B.F. Brown and the Annex. So I know about buildings that are probably not in the best of shape at this point. I live within almost eyesight. If Longjo wasn't there, I could see City Hall. It's a project that I 100% support because I want to see this city. I want to see it thrive, and I want to see it come to not what it used to be, but what it can be. I worked for the Fitchburg Public Schools for 32 years. I'm retired. I don't take away the fact that, yes, we do need repairs and we do need things done in our schools. But I think that our schools are more than just our buildings. We have wonderful teachers. Our schools are in great hands under our current superintendent and his staff. So I think that things will get done. But I think that in order to have a viable downtown, every town I drive through, city, has their city hall in downtown. We've had some beautiful restorations. I could cite Air as one that took a building that was old and run down and has done a fabulous job of reconditioning and redoing their building and keeping with the historical aspect of it. So I do support this initiative, and I hope that it comes to fruition because it certainly will make our city a better city, and it will up our value of our properties also. So thank you very much, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you. So before we call the next speaker, we have several more people on the speakers list. Are there still those in the audience who didn't get a chance to sign in on the sheet? Okay, excellent. So we'll have a sheet go back around to the back of the room for folks' final chance to add themselves.
Tricia Pistone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. Mr. Mayor. I also need my glasses. Good evening. My name is Tricia Pistone, and I'm here tonight as the co-director of Reimagine North of Maine. As many of you know, Reimagine North of Maine is a coalition of private, public, nonprofit organizations, along with residents, many of who you heard from tonight, working to improve conditions in the downtown area dubbed the North of Maine. Our vision over the past 4 years is to make the North of Maine a place where people want to live, work, invest. To date, we have secured funding to increase the number of viable businesses on Main Street, improve the housing market, improve public infrastructure, and build resident leadership to address those issues that most resonate within the neighborhood. That vision includes a vibrant downtown that has diverse retail, galleries, and eateries. It also includes Fitchburg Historic City Hall, standing in the midst of it as a tribute to Fitchburg's past and future, welcoming residents not only as a transactional place, but as a community and civic epicenter. We continue to hear comments such as Fitchburg is experiencing a renaissance and things are beginning to happen. This vote tonight will decide which path we are on. As the landlord of an entire vacant block of buildings, the city must put a stake in the revitalization of Main Street in order to continue to send those market messages that Fitchburg and its downtown is open for business. And for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I learned that in Fitchburg Public Schools, by the way. In this case, doing nothing also has a financial impact. March 4th of this year will mark the 20th anniversary of GE announcing the plant closure on Boulder Drive, which laid off 600 employees. I stood beside union workers, managers, and city officials who worked in solidarity to revitalize not only that site, but the city's economy as well. As a result of that work, the Redevelopment Authority invested over $14 million to redevelop Putnam Place into an economic engine for the city. Let me repeat, an economic engine. The goal then, and continues to be, to utilize the 300,000 square foot building with its unique manufacturing assets to attract businesses and high-paying jobs to that site. Leaving City Hall on Boulder Drive continues to undermine the Redevelopment Authority's ability to attract much-needed industrial and commercial investments to the city. In closing, I'd like to leave you with a quote from Donovan Rakima, expert in historic preservation and economic development. Rehabilitating historic buildings and using the infrastructure that is already in place to serve them is the height of fiscal and environmental responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have the list of who's next? There's Christina. Okay.
I'm sorry, sir.
So Brian
Brian
Bellevue. Thank you.
Do you want to call this?
That's fine. Yeah. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brian Bellevue, a lifelong resident of Fitchburg, a 35-year member of the fire department, a member of the board of directors on the Historical Society, but here tonight I'm speaking as a small business owner. Very small business owner, but it's still a business here in Fitchburg. Before I start, I'd just like to offer my condolences to the mayor and councilor, Dina Talley. Being here tonight, it must be hard for you, but it shows your commitment to this city. When we opened our business, there was a lot of naysayers about what we were going to do here. We've been open 8 years now, and we proved them all wrong. It's important to see not just businesses invest in business, it's important to see the city invest in itself as a business. It's good to get everything under one-stop shopping. When somebody comes in, if they see Mary Jo Bohart and they want to start a business, that they're presented with a package and they don't have to go all over the city to get things started. Hopefully she would walk with the mayor and introduce that person and get things rolling and get the business started in the right direction. It's important, I think, to get City Hall renovated, bring most of the businesses under that one roof again, most of the offices, and departments under that roof again. And in this campus design, it seems to make a great deal of sense, in my opinion. When we saw the city invest in the fire department, the high school, The Phase 1, as a firefighter, moving from Oliver Street, and I was sentimental about that building. I started my career there. Going to North Street as Phase 1 and seeing the university tie in with Phase 2 and 3. We have people come to the B&B, and they cannot believe how this has changed the city in that section. We need to keep doing that on Main Street and other areas of the city. I feel for the schools. My daughters all were public school students, had great educations here. But it's important, again, within the school budget, maintenance has to be a key part of their spending also. And the city needs to make sure that there's funding for that maintenance. Insulation and heat are important, and I know when it's cold, we turn our heat up to make sure the pipes don't freeze. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael McLaughlin. Good evening.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals and, obviously a resident of Fitchburg. Several years ago, the previous administration made a decision to close City Hall. That administration also had formed a committee, and I was given the opportunity to serve on that committee along with Joel Caddy and Jay Bry and others. And, the committee met for several weeks and basically came back to the administration, with the finding that if we ourselves abandon Main Street, what message do we send to the existing businesses, the future businesses, the businesses we're trying to attract, and the residents if we abandon Main Street? It's an iconic building. We all know it's about 166 years old. The land was donated by a philanthropist. The bricks were struck in Fitchburg for the building. The timbers were cut and hewn. So it's a pretty iconic building. It's what Fitchburg stands for. Obviously, I'm in full support with moving forward with a new City Hall. As a member of the Board of Appeals, it's been extremely challenging over the last 6 or 7 years. Typically when City Hall was in use, there were council chambers and there were several other small chambers where different boards could conduct their meetings. And frequently, as you all know, different boards and council members need to interact and be at these meetings as they simultaneously occur. Over the last 6 or 7 years, and there are other board members and past board members that are here that can attest, we've had meetings in lobbies, we've had meetings here, we've had meetings at many other places, and people are missing meetings. People don't know where to go because from week to week we don't know where the meeting's going to be held ourselves. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and look forward to having a new iconic building on Main Street.
Thank you.
Mr. Kushner.
Sure, no problem. What's the? How do you pronounce that? Was that Sheila? Next we have Sheila so I apologize, Talamaraju. And Sheila, I apologize. I butchered your last name even though I've said it half a dozen times tonight.
I was cleaning my driveway and I had to come here to speak. So I wrote some of my key points because I'm forgetting things these days. I'm going off track and getting old, so I thought I'd just read off my notes. Wanted to make some comments about the school system that I've been hearing in the past couple of days, and those are what my thoughts are that I've expressed in here. I was very tempted to sit on the sidelines and not comment this evening about the Fitchburg Public Schools. But for 12 years, on a daily basis, I've seen principals like Mr. Roach, Mr. Shalafo, John Thompson, Amazing SPSAs like Becky Lavia, Mark Minucci, that work together to find innovative and efficient solutions to improve public education where all students can reach their greatest potential. It is with gratitude to them and loyalty to the institution of the Fitchburg Public Schools that I feel the need to make the following comments. I am proud of the fact that our schools don't shy away from our challenges, which include funding shortfalls, immigration, implementation issues, classroom size, family factors. Majority of our children are on reduced and free lunches, technology, bullying, No Child Left Behind Act, special education, and many more. Selfless teachers and staff come every day to their schools, despite all these challenges, with humility and sincerity to make a positive difference in our children's lives. Public schools are the foundation on which our society is built. Public education provides opportunity and access for all students to receive an education. I believe that so much of a school's success depends on the resources and community that surrounds the schools. I request everyone, for the sake of our principals, teachers, and children, that it's important to recognize the achievements of our public schools so that all of us understand the value to support these crucial institutions in our community. We need to come together as a community to make sure we're doing all we can to make it the best it can be. In order to win the respect and affection of our children, it's important for all of us to remember that the key to civic engagement is integrity and civility, that we become part of the solution, not part of the problem. Maya Angelou once said, "Hate, it has caused a lot of problems in the world, but has not solved one yet." Our children are worth more than that. The schools are the main issue that connects all of us. Only with all of us working together can we respond more effectively and efficiently to the needs of our children. And I strongly believe that Mayor DeNatale is a supporter of the public schools and the best for our city. So I would like to request everyone to losing my train of thought here, to not use the hate rhetoric that they're using on Facebook about, the school systems are not working efficiently, or they're not are productive enough. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Joe Bowen. Good evening.
Good evening. I have a prepared statement, and I promise it's exactly 2 minutes long. Good evening, City Councilors, and I'd like to thank the Council President for permitting a public forum for this evening's meeting on the City Hall project. I've been following this project for some time due to my sincere interest in revitalizing downtown. I commend all that have worked tirelessly to bring this project to where it is today. I can't say with certainty that I am well read on this effort, but I gave it my best shot. I would like to see it go forward, but I don't feel this is the year for it. There remain unanswered questions surrounding this project and the city's other priorities, including its strategic plan for capital spending, business growth, information technology, and general maintenance of our facilities and infrastructure. Please address these during your deliberations to show all the logic behind your respective votes to set the public minds at ease. Also, there have been several emotional statements made publicly in this forum and through other channels that are justifiable to each of these individuals. Please respect their statements, strip away the emotional content, and address the logic behind them. If there is misinformation, please make known the correct information so that these individuals' concerns are addressed. Given that I still have time, I would like to make known that, unless I missed it, the City Hall plan does not include capital funding for the information technology infrastructure of the building, aside from running fiber optic cabling from the street. Routers, switches, servers, data storage, phone systems, security appliances, backup and disaster recovery equipment, if not included, will not prepare the city for future growth and efficiency. I realize this adds additional capital to the project, but a retrofit will be more expensive. As you know, it is a rarity to have this level of community participation in person at a city council meeting, and you must keep that in mind during your deliberations. I understand that you will not be able to make everyone happy with your vote. I trust that you will take this advice and attempt some of my recommendations to gain additional faith and trust in your role as elected city leaders. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Steve Savulis. Thanks.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity. Well, one of the detriments about speaking next to the last is
everybody stepped all over every one of my points this evening. I do want to give you a little background. I was born and raised in Fitchburg. I was a product of the Fitchburg school system. My children are the product of the Fitchburg school system. My grandchildren are a product of the Fitchburg school system, but that's not why I came here tonight. I was not aware that there was a little conflict. But in my background, we ran a design firm on Main Street in Fitchburg for 20 years. Participated in a whole series of projects in downtown Fitchburg, the intermodal, and many of the other buildings in the downtown area. As time went by, we could see that the economy and in the way the economy was moving with the big box stores, that downtowns would be being impacted. And a group of us started off with a group called Pride Incorporated, which sort of maintained the parking in downtown and evolved into a group called Fitchburg by Design. Fitchburg by Design was a 501c3 nonprofit. We created it to partner up with the city to stave off the deleterious happenings in the downtown area and to encourage revitalization. We had a great board of directors. We had every bank president, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, the publisher of the newspaper, the president of the college. It was a wonderful group, but it was the wrong time, just the wrong time. And I was a little encouraged, and I just found out last night I'm off to Boston very early in the morning, and I'm home very late at night, and I really don't get to participate in much of anything locally any longer. But I understood that this was going on, and I wanted the opportunity to speak. As a result of the work I did professionally in Fitchburg and with Fitchburg by Design, I had the luxury of traveling to Washington, working with the Main Street USA group, and went to different projects that were going on around the country in downtowns.
Sorry to ask you to conclude your comments.
I'll do it very quickly. What we have here with the onset of the revitalization of the City Hall, the theater block, the Bank of America building, to me, this is ground zero for revitalization for downtown Fitchburg. It's important to everybody, property values, business owners, and I would encourage you strongly to take a look at that. I am a little confused about the conflation of the schools and in town hall. I would figure MSBA would take care of the schools, and this would be a separate issue. I hope it turns out that way, and good luck to you all and your endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ellen DiGeronimo.
You're doing a better job than me.
Do you want her?
Sure.
I'm listening for you to focus on.
Exactly. I'll take those. Good evening.
Good evening to all of you. My name is Ellen DiGeronimo. I live at 197 Bridle Cross Road, and my husband and I have been taxpayers in this city for 58 years. Both of us attended the Fitchburg Public Schools and are grateful for wonderful education. Our children attended the Fitchburg Public Schools, our grandchildren, and now we have great-grandchildren attending the Fitchburg Public Schools. And I have absolute faith and trust that the leaders, both of the city council, the mayor, the city council, and the school committee, will address the needs of the schools. But in order to do that, we have to be sure that we are going to increase our tax base in order to be able to pay for all of these additional costs. I would like to point out the fact that the Fitchburg City Hall is a contributing building to the downtown architecture of the H.M. Francis Historic District. And that's an important fact that a lot of people perhaps don't know. It has been the People's House since 1853. In 1852, the townspeople of the town of Fitchburg voted to build a new town hall. They were moving forward. Around 1904, the ceiling in City Hall collapsed. It was necessary for the employees and the leaders of the city to move to adjoining buildings, but they made the decision to move forward and reinvest in City Hall and thus continue the use of the People's House. History, of course, has repeated itself today, as it does many times. And your action has the potential to bring prosperity to Main Street. 80, excuse me just a second, I need my glasses cleaned. In the 80s, your predecessors voted to rezone downtown Fitchburg, the Main Street of downtown Fitchburg, thus allowing residential use on the upper floors of the beautiful downtown buildings. Today, Fitchburg State University is committed, and Jay Bry was very informative in telling everyone here that not only has Fitchburg State, are they investing in the theater block, they're bringing an opportunity for the city to invest, to join them in reinvesting in the city and with the renovation of City Hall. I believe that this action will encourage reinvestment in the outstanding downtown buildings along our Main Street, thus expanding the tax base and providing new funds to continue to provide the services that have been provided all these many years to the residents. I believe that the leaders of the city can manage the necessary repairs to the school buildings and create a dignified, a dignified place to conduct the city's business. City employees will return to Main Street.
Ms. Deidre, I'm about to ask you to conclude your comments.
College students will be coming, professors will be coming. And I would just like to point out that you can look at cities like Lowell, Newburyport, Salem, and other mill towns in this state to realize that they have invested in their older buildings, creating pride and prosperity in their community. And you can do the same thing. I invite you to honor the past and inspire the future by renovating Fitchburg City Hall and leading the way to reinvestment in our wonderful downtown and creating a marvelous place for the community to gather once again. Thank you. I wish you all the very best of luck. I realize you have an enormous decision to make, but I will pray that you will make the right one.
Thank you.
Denise Goyette.
Good evening.
Sorry, I have nothing prepared. I too was going to sit on the sidelines.
Right.
I have two children in Fitchburg schools, one in Monty Tech, which I know is not technically a public school, one in Fitchburg High, and I also have a grandson who just started school in Fitchburg. I was totally against the City Hall renovations, but as the woman stated, maybe in phases would be a better fit where the schools need so much repair. I'm new at this. I'm kind of new to Fitchburg as well, but why not put up windmills or solar panels to save money on the contract with Unitel, which will free up some more dollars and perhaps help the schools? It's about the only suggestion I have. But our children are our future, and without our future, we're not going to have a city. And they're the priority.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emma Salvatore?
Salvatore Emma.
Salvatore Emma, my apologies.
I'll be brief. I just want to thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm a lifelong resident. I was born in Fitchburg, no longer a resident, but my company is a resident in Fitchburg. We are Micron Products in downtown. We employ 120 people in Fitchburg. we pay 120 people in Fitchburg who spend their money in Fitchburg. It's very important to recognize that a downtown revitalization project like this is immensely important to a business like ours. We are also working with developers to revitalize the Harper Building and the firehouse next door. So I can't tell you that a new city hall will directly impact us, but I can tell you it does make us feel a lot better. I think there's a flawed premise that it's a binary decision between a city hall or spending money in schools. We can do both, but we can do both when there's more money and more tax money generated by businesses like ours. So, just thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ileana Lopez.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Nelly Lopez. I was a trustee for the Fitchburg Public Library for the last 8 years. I'm also a business owner. My business is on Main Street, 251. It's Resource Management, Inc. This is my daughter. She's an 8th grader at Longjo. We were here in the last meeting, and this meeting she wanted to step up and speak, so I'm giving her the floor.
When it comes to the whole thing with the roof, which the 4th floor is completely off, and if I'm being honest, it was sudden, but it wasn't like a super unexpected thing. Like it wasn't a new issue, you know. That's been an issue, you know, longer than I've been in the school, you know. There's always been leaks and stuff, and, you know, the school's not in a super good condition, and it hasn't been at all. And I don't think the city hall is like a good top priority right now. I think it's a good idea, but not right now. I think we should focus on that. Focus on the schools first, and then do that, you know, when all that is sorted.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Jessica Jacobson.
Okay, I'll remind you. Good evening. Just before you, I just remind all speakers to, wherever possible, for those in the audience and the counselors around the table, to speak up wherever possible. That's it. Good evening.
Okay. Good evening. I've been hearing that one of the major reasons is for moving the city hall is that we need a bigger room for meetings like this. And my question is, well, like, why are we having it in a library when we could be having it in, you know, one of those well-maintained auditoriums that we have? I feel like we might be trying to prove someone's point. And then also, let's see. The other one is that we want to create more foot traffic on Main Street. I don't believe that putting City Hall on Main Street is actually going to cause more foot traffic. Who pays the taxes? It's homeowners, but who's the majority of the foot traffic? We're renters. Renters are what, you know, are more, there's more renters than homeowners in Fitchburg. They're not the ones going down to City Hall to pay their taxes. Last time I paid my taxes, it wasn't because I was on a leisurely stroll on Main Street. I was doing errands and I drove there. And I actually like seeing buildings that are in use on the other side of Main Street. I'm not saying that we shouldn't preserve City Hall. It's a great building. I think it does need to be preserved, but I think we should really look at the budget and, you know, put as little money that needs into it right now just to preserve it so that it doesn't have to be destroyed. You know, and then focus on the things that the city does need, that are currently being neglected. I know if I maintain any of my properties as rental properties, like this, you know, you guys are supposed to be like, I'm sorry. You're supposed to be the managers of our city, and if I managed my apartment building like you're managing the public schools, well, I know the health department would be shutting me down pretty fast, or I wouldn't have any tenants, or you know, a lot. And then I also hear a lot about the property taxes going up, you know, and I know if I'm looking to buy a house, I'm going to be looking at that school system. You know, I don't see how my recent property tax bill came in and it's an increase, but I don't see anyone lining up to buy my house anymore since, you know, our schools, we have to go to a neighboring town to help us out because we can't even provide a location for the school kids to go to. Which I'm not even really supposed to talk about the schools, but,
I just ask you to
oh, yeah.
make your final comment.
You know, we're considered the dirty burg by a lot of the neighbors, you know, all the other towns, which, you know, it is, but it's not due to the location of our city hall. And, you know, more taxes, the higher the rent, a lot of these tenants can barely afford the rent as it is, and their Unitil bill. You know, there's a lot of other issues that I think need to be addressed that just aren't being addressed and taken care of before city hall renovation, major city hall renovation. And I like the phase idea too.
Thank you.
Benjamin Ryan?
Good evening.
My name is Benjamin Ryan. I just wanted to say that I think that it would be nice if we could do some work on City Hall and clean up the downtown area. But I think priorities need to be, you know, we need to take a look at the kids, you know. That's what's the future. We gotta take care of the kids, and I have kids that go to school here in Fitchburg, and everybody's having issues with all the problems that are going on here in the school, and maybe we should take a good look at how we can prioritize our money and get back to maybe doing some more work, just like I said with the phases. That sounds like a decent idea, but I think the kids need to come first. Thank you.
Thank you.
Harold Mateo?
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you? My name is Harold Mateo. I'm a longtime resident of the city of Fitchburg. I'm a byproduct of the Fitchburg school system, South Street Elementary, B.F. Brown, Fitchburg High School, and then had the opportunity to study at Bentley University and do my MBA at Babson College and Harvard University as well. I have been investing here in the city of Fitchburg for over 10 years and have been very committed to the city. And I feel that the city itself should be committed to itself by having this beautiful building restored. I invest in historic homes and restore many near the downtown City Hall. I also at the same time feel that it is important to have preventive measures for school maintenance rather than reactive measures. And so that may help control some of the things that sometimes happen. Some are unexpected and you just have to deal with them as they come and as have recently have occurred. At the same time, I feel that while this renovation of the downtown City Hall takes place, we should consider the hiring of a company that is local to the area, that is going to invest in our local plumbers, local electricians, to keep the money here in the city and circulating. I think that's important. Many may not feel that is the case, but if you're going to be investing in a renovation in a city like Fitchburg, why not hire locally? So with that being said, I support the project. I think it's important for our downtown. It's not an easy conversation to have, but we're having it. And I think Fitchburg is certainly heading in the right direction. It needs to continue to become more friendly towards businesses that want to invest here. It needs to continue to become a welcoming place for families that want to buy properties in Fitchburg. And the education system itself, I would say, you know, if you go to a Fitchburg public school and you want to do work and you work hard, you make it. It shows you that if you can make it in Fitchburg, you can certainly make it anywhere. So that's it. I want to thank you. I hope it goes through.
Thank you.
Matt Fournier?
Good evening.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? All right. My name is Matt Fournier. I'm a local business owner, developer, investor with many multiple properties in the city and projects throughout, from downtown to West Fitchburg up into the hills of Fitchburg as well. I'm also a standing board member on the Fitchburg Pride, North Central Chamber of Commerce, and Fitchburg Historical Society. I wanted to thank everybody here tonight, council members, mayor, local community members who have taken the time this evening to voice their opinions and emotions on the topic of the City Hall renovations. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the restoration of the City Hall, as it is a hinge project and an investment in a much broader vision for Fitchburg and the economic success and revitalization of our downtown, but also our city. And one that is trying to create a place to live, work, play, and invest. When I say invest, it's not just for the private investors. The city needs to invest in itself as well. It needs to invest in its schools, but it also needs to invest in its downtown, historical buildings, and its City Hall. The investments in this corridor of our downtown and a revitalized City Hall are imperative to our economic success, which will further inspire private development. This is already being seen with Fitchburg State, and honestly, I think we all owe them a round of applause, honestly, for the amount of work that they've put into the city. And at some point, we need to start showing that we're willing to put our skin in the game as well. Our elected officials here tonight have a great responsibility to lead by example by moving forward with this investment with a revitalized City Hall to send a clear message which will support a much larger vision, a vision which includes transformative projects within the theater block, the B.F. Brown Live Work community, led by New View Communities and in partnership with the Fitchburg Art Museum, among other projects in the pipeline, including 35 Main Street, which we're part of, 409 Main Street, which is another development project that's in the process, the Harper Street project, which you just heard about, and many others that are in the pipeline that are really banking and hoping on this happening. We want to see that the private investors are putting their money in the projects in the city, but also our city is, rewarding them on the backside and saying we will invest too because we believe in our downtown. The funding analysis on this project already demonstrates that the project is affordable.
Mr. Fournier, I'd ask you to conclude your comments.
The Bowles Drive location, I just want to remind everybody, we are not owners of that property. We're renting. And that's just more cost that's not going into our school for repairs and things like that. And I think that it's important that everybody realizes that we are a tenant. We need to rebuild our structures that we have and have a place that we can work efficiently and cut out some of the other waste that's ongoing as well. So I'll leave it at that, but I'm in favor of it, and I hope you guys take that and realize that, we need you guys to step up as much as you need us to step up. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sally Cragen?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sally Cragen. I live at 1138 Oak Hill Road. This is Mr. Waffles. He is a therapy cat, and I brought him because I just came from the MIHN homeless shelter, and I didn't have time to bring him home, so I needed to bring him here. So I am here also to speak on behalf of the schools. I serve on the school committee, and Mr. Waffles works in the schools as a therapy cat as well. I can tell you when I was elected in 2008, I was told by more people than not, you'll never fix the schools. You'll never fix the schools. We can't afford it. They didn't do anything, blah, 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 on and on. Guess what? We fixed the schools. 2008 to 2011, we put in 15 new Wiesmann gas-fired boilers. We put new roofs on South Street, on Goodrich, on Memorial, on Rheingold, and Longview also, partly. We also put in new windows and doors, Memorial, Rheingold, and South Street, and those are multi-million dollar repairs. We got 80% of that money back for the schools. We absolutely can fix City Hall because we have the leadership to do it. I'm also speaking on behalf of Stratton Players. I have been a member of Stratton Players for 49 years. Yes, I started young. My mother, Janet Cragen, who passed away in 2014, would want me to tell you that Stratton Players is in Lucy's Barn next to the Fay Club. And the revitalization of Main Street includes Stratton Players as well as New Players Theater Guild. So everyone in this room needs to understand that two community theaters that are vital to the heartbeat of this region are dependent on the ongoing good faith, goodwill, and good sense of the people making decisions. So thank you for your consideration and understanding.
Thank you. I don't believe Mr. Waffle signed in this evening, though. We're going to have to strike his testimony from the record.
Can I ask you Fred Benoit?
Comments that they put on the table after they.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd just like to point out again that everybody keeps making it sound like the Boulder Drive office is in Ashby or something. I think you can see the old City Hall and probably even throw a snowball at it from where you are. So how much more downtown can you get than that? There's not a whole lot of rush to spend all of that money on this project. There's no data to support that it's going to draw any new business. It's all just, oh, if we fix it, more business will come. I doubt anybody's going to say, well, let's put our business in Fitchburg because they've got a nice new renovated historic building. And to compare us to other cities that are like Lowell, that has 495 and Route 3 running right through the middle of it, or Northampton, you just can't compare us to other places like that because we're very different. There's no access to a major highway here. And besides just the schools, the roads are falling apart. There's catch basins and sewers and everything that are caving in, the potholes. Unitil's got us by, well, in a hard place, let's just say. I think if everybody came together and put as much energy into doing something about that, we could probably get something done versus this unnecessary City Hall renovation. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Brooks?
Hello, and thank everyone taking the time to listen, everybody. A lot of passion tonight, a lot of people with a lot of emotions. I was born and raised in Fitchburg, educated here, went to Fitchburg State College. My son went off to school and works in the city of Fitchburg. My daughter went to Fitchburg State. Fitchburg has so much to offer. We have, I volunteered for Crocker Field Restoration Committee, mainly because we have so much architecture in this city that people have either neglected, lost interest in. We've had fires, we've had other issues. This city has so much history that I donated a lot of my time for Crocker Field. I was on the Conservation Commission because I believe in proper building, proper steps to be taken within the city. I have a business in town, pay taxes, I have a home in town. I'm totally for the new City Hall. You look down Main Street and we had so much gorgeous architecture. How can we tear down something today and have our kids tomorrow have nothing to look forward to? All we're gonna have is all these new buildings and empty spaces. We need to step up like Fitchburg State College did and continue what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Tomez?
If I was Latino, that'd be Tomez.
Good evening.
I can't tell your ethnicity from your name.
What's wrong? Say hello to everybody. My name is Pastor Brian Tomes. I pastor Crossroads Community Church, which is right across the street from a very luxurious high school that you can park about 4 airplanes in, the gymnasium. And so it's apparent to me that our city is definitely on board with our school systems. I have 4 kids, 4 little ones. I have 2 in Crocker. And they were very helpful through that whole water problem, and we're grateful for that. And they work very hard. And matter of fact, it's a very quality school system that we have here that's actually attracting a lot of families. I'm thankful for the lower taxes that I pay. I came from Lexington, Massachusetts, where they pay about 14 times more, and Acton and Concord. And you know what I love about this city? It's getting better every day. And I'm grateful to live here. I love Fitchburg. I became a Fitchburgian, or have a burger, whatever you guys call it. But we're grateful to be here. And, you know, I think there's a lot of misconception about what's happening here. I think a lot of people think that we have to say no to one thing to say yes to another thing, and I think that's not true. I think we can have them both. I think we can have, I know that our schools update. I work as a church. We have budgets. We have budgets for one thing. We have budgets for another thing. I know that there's one thing that's going to come off and there's another thing that's going to come on. I know that there's a big loan on the school, apparently. Am I correct about that? On the high school? And I think that's coming to an end. Is that correct? And so, you know what I mean? And, you know, they did that, I would imagine, at the sacrifice of City Hall. And so, like I said, I don't think we have to say no to one thing to say yes to another thing. Now, every year we get together. We have a whole bunch of people that come down, 300 to 500 people every year on a We Love Our City campaign, where all of our Crossroads people come and we serve our city. We work on Main Street. Main Street looks beautiful right now from 12 years ago when I got here. And that's a lot of hard work, not only from what we've been doing, but New View community. A lot of people have been working hard on making that whole approach to what we have, our downtown area, nice. And so I think the last couple seconds is, again, I don't think we have to sacrifice one thing for another thing. I think both things are getting just as much attention. But I know one thing, we shouldn't leave this place on one side or another. We should definitely try to come together. And I learned one thing about leadership. You need to support the leadership that we have. And I appreciate all that you do. I appreciate all that you do. And certainly the council, you guys have been working very hard. And I want you to know that we're behind you guys on whatever. I know this is going to come down to a vote. But once the vote is done, I think everybody needs to be happy about what's been done. And so we appreciate all your hard work. And we know that you support all those areas, the high schools, the school systems. We worked hard. Matter of fact, we work on the school and Main Street. We could do both.
Thank you, Pastor.
Diane Macchio.
Good evening.
My name is Diane Macchio. I live 43 Lemon Avenue, Fitchburg, Massachusetts. I was born in Fitchburg. I was brought up in Fitchburg, educated in Fitchburg. I live in the house that my grandfather built over 100 years ago. I pay taxes on that house. And when I tell people that where I reside, I tell them that my home is Fitchburg. And because my home is Fitchburg, I believe in the future of Fitchburg. And part of that future is taking care of our city hall and taking care of our schools. And I believe that the people that's sitting around these tables and the people in this room have the brains, have the heart to come together and get those things done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, that is the end.
Before we move out of the public forum, I want to provide one final opportunity for folks that haven't had a chance to speak this evening. Is there anyone remaining at this time who has yet to have an opportunity? Seeing none? Oh, I apologize. Mr. Donnelly, good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Tom Donnelly. I've lived in Fitchburg for 60-plus years. I've started investing in Fitchburg 45 years ago. And when you're running a $100 million budget, you have multiple projects going on at all times. The former councilor mentioned Fitchburg High School, fire station, the police station. And at the same time, the South Street Elementary did a $5 million improvement when they did that. There's always projects. You can talk to any department head. Everyone has demands what they want. But with a $100 million project, there are multiple opportunities at the same time. If the city hall is redone, the people will move out of Putnam Place. There'll be an opportunity for more businesses. That's what the Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority is trying to do, is get more business. With an empty building on Main Street, it helps no one. So, complimentary things. Most of the speakers from agencies or people who understand what's happening in Fitchburg, it's all about economic development. That's what we need. We can't afford it, and I believe we should do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jennifer Jones, and I live at 1428 Main Street. Been living in Fitchburg now for 30 years, and although I still feel like a newcomer, I'm also the past president and still on the executive board of the Fitchburg Cultural Alliance. And the Fitchburg Cultural Alliance is an organization here in the city that started in 1978. And we have grown to include businesses, galleries, individual artists, small artist groups, all the cultural organizations in the city, and community organizations. They comprise our membership. And in 2013, we submitted a proposal to the Massachusetts Cultural Council to designate Fitchburg as a cultural district. And at that time, they put us on hold to give us that designation. And the reason for putting us on hold was that they felt that the primary vision to be designated as a cultural district was a walkable city, a place where you could go and you could visit the assets, the beautiful things that are on Main Street within within a comfortable range to walk. And when we did our proposal, we had actually included, I think, from Moran Square all the way up to Crocker. And because we felt that there were so many wonderful assets and places to visit and see in Fitchburg. They came back to us in a report that said, well, our cultural district is too long. But they also said that in order for us to become a walkable city, a place where people want to come, is that we have to invest in businesses. We have to invest in bringing people to Main Street, a reason to come to Main Street. And I think that from what everyone has said here, this is an unusual, kind of an unprecedented time, and we've got an influx of state and private money that are investing right now. And I think it's up to the city to do its part. And the City Hall, the plans for the City Hall, I think, are wonderful. I can't get into the finances. That's your job. I also know that the schools also have to be taken care of. But it shouldn't be a choice, as others have said. I think that we have to invest in ourselves. It is my home. It is my city. I just moved into Yarn Works, which is a restored mill, 100-year-old mill at Nokigi. It was called the Nokigi Mill, and they made yarn. It is spectacular, and it's in walking distance to Main Street. There are 96 units. They're all full with families, people like me, all ages. We can walk to downtown. We want to walk to downtown. We want to take our kids, and we
Ms. Jones, I'd
want
ask you
to
to
do that.
conclude your
So
comments.
I think that City Hall is part of that package. That's the vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Final call before we exit out of the public forum. Good evening, sir.
My name's Don Ostrowski. I'm on the Historical Commission and live in Fitchburg. I'm an educator, so I have a very big interest in schools and education. And what I'm hearing tonight is that the City Hall is not just the City Hall. It's part of a larger plan to revitalize the economy of the city, which is vital. If you don't revitalize the economy of the city, you may have to shut down the schools because you won't have the money to even keep them open. So they do go hand in hand, but it's not an either or. You need to have economic revitalization in order to improve the schools. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello. Thank you for hosting this event this evening. My name is John Bogdasarian, and I'm a physician in Fitchburg. I live up the street from City Hall at 100 Flat Rock Road. I've lived here 38 years now. I can't add much to all the eloquent speeches that have been given. I think the issues have been very well covered. But I thought I might just briefly tell a personal story about my coming here. In 1978, I left my residency in Boston and came out to interview for a job. My parents, who lived in New York State, followed me through Fitchburg just to look at it a few days after I came to interview, and my mother called me and said, "Please don't go to that godforsaken place." I didn't listen to her then, and I still don't, but I'm very thankful that I didn't listen to her. But I think that certainly Fitchburg has an image problem. It's undeserved. I think we've heard how wonderful a place it is and what a hidden jewel we have here. But I think that it would be good for recruitment of business and for individuals to come here to see a revitalized Main Street. I know during my time here I've tried to recruit physicians, and many times spouses come and say, well, I don't think this is the place that we want to be. And I think that's unfair. It's a wonderful place to be. But I think that having a revitalized Main Street with all the business that would come with that is very important. I think that as business comes, the tax base will be improved and increased. And I think the school systems and the other things that we want to have will come along with that. So I think that image is an important thing, and I think I just came from a meeting at the so-called Fitchburg City Hall with the Board of Health, and that's not really a city hall, frankly. It's crowded, and I think we can do a lot better than that for all of us to have meetings at. So again, I can't really add much to all the eloquence that I've heard, but thanks very much for listening to me.
Thank you. All right, I'll try this one more time. Final call. That's all right. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Corinne Hartenstein, 23 Plain Street. I really wasn't going to do this, but here I am. I grew up in Framingham, which is a lot like a big Fitchburg. And we kind of went through the same thing where Framingham was really not a prosperous community for a long time. And what brought the city up was not a nice city hall, but it was Jack's Abbey Brewery moving into town. And so maybe we need to give River Styx a little more time before we invest all this money. If we could do it all, we would have been doing it all. We wouldn't have closed City Hall, and our schools wouldn't need all this maintenance. But we can't do it all. I'm also a local educator. I don't work in the Fitchburg public school system, but I do teach in a school in Fitchburg. Fitchburg students face some unique challenges. For some of them, the 10 meals a week they get at school might be the only 10 meals a week they get. They might not have the same family support some of us are blessed enough to have. If they don't know that their school is safe, it's going to be warm, it's going to have a roof, they can't learn. And we owe it to our kids to have those things. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any further comment from the public before we close public forum? Seeing none. Counselor, I just want to do a temperature check. We're at 9 o'clock. Does anyone, does the council want to take a brief recess before we begin deliberation? Is there anyone? Yes, so we'll take a 5-minute recess. It's 8:59. We'll resume at 9:05. So I'd like to resume the council as a whole committee meeting at this time. For the agenda is as follows for the rest of the evening. Before we resume with the agenda, I know the mayor would like to provide comments. Immediately following that, petition 00818 will be before the council. We'll then ask for a presentation and discussion from Calvin Brooks and Mary Delaney briefly on City Hall before final deliberation on 03 and 0418. That said, I just want to thank everyone who's here this evening, everyone who spoke for their productive and responsible comments this evening. We had 50, I believe 50 exact people spoke this evening. I think that's heartwarming as a community. It's good to see this kind of deliberation and discussion and productive disagreement in a community. I think we should be proud of our city and our community for having people who care this much to come forth and speak about the issues that matter to them. So thank you to each of you. That helps inform us, and that helps us make our decision. That said, Mayor DiNatale.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I am about to say this evening, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll pay close attention. This information that I will be imparting to you is the result of a great deal of effort by my staff, including Executive Director of Community Development, Tom Skorowski, who made a great contribution to this. There's a great deal of information in this in what I'm going to say tonight that's very important. Economic Development Director Mary Jo Bohart as well had a great deal to do with what I'm about to say tonight. The cost of renovating City Hall is a topic we don't take lightly. Investments in our city's infrastructure need to be strategic and deliberate, and we believe this project is both. Many people talk about the costs of renovating City Hall. What we need to talk about are the costs of not renovating City Hall. Costs we believe far outweigh those of this project. This project is about economic development. You've heard it over and over again this evening, and will help increase our revenue and provide us with the opportunity to focus on other citywide needs. Some will say this is an either-or decision between City Hall and schools, but that is simply not true. A 2016 study of capital needs for our schools puts the cost at the lowest estimate around $117 million. With or without City Hall, that will be a challenge. The best approach to address this challenge is to leverage state resources to build new buildings. Even if we put all of our borrowing capacity towards schools, we couldn't fund a single one. That's not one. That is why the Massachusetts School Building Authority funds at 80% of school capital projects. Meeting our schools' capital needs requires the state's help, just as we did to fully fund the construction of the new high school. I would urge those who are concerned about addressing our school building needs to contact their state legislators and urge them to begin a dialogue to increase the mechanism to fund SBA. Currently, 1 penny from the 6.25% sales tax that you all use is allocated to MSBA. The state needs to consider increasing that number and streamlining the application process. We've already entered into discussions with Representative Hay, who was here this evening. Is he still here? I don't see him. And I will be meeting with Senator Tran as well to talk about the importance of this measure. Matter of fact, Representative Hay has already filed a bill in the House to address just this issue. The second way we can pay for our schools, roads, and other services by raising tax revenue through economic development. And the City Hall project at its fundamental level is about economic development. This is about our redevelopment authority spending less time managing buildings and more time creating jobs and increasing the commercial tax base downtown. This is about increasing the values of surrounding buildings and sending signals to the market that downtown Fitchburg is worth the investment. It sends an important market signal supported by nearly $75 million in nearby investment. We have an unparalleled opportunity here. Across the street, Fitchburg State is making a $25 million investment in the theater block. You heard from Jay Bry. They broke ground on the first phase, a $3.1 million Idea Lab, in November. Down the street, the B.F. Brown project will invest over $20 million in an artist live workspace. Between the three projects, we could be looking at nearly $75 million of investment within a concentrated area. This will have catalytic potential downtown. That is why Smart Growth America, in its Next Steps memo, encouraged the city to restore City Hall. That is why the city is applying for Mass Development Transformative Development Initiative, which is a program picked this specific area as its focus. This is about being bold and making a statement that downtown Fitchburg is on the rise and the city is part of that change. No, please.
I'd ask everyone to hold their applause.
Thank you. Our current location limits the Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority's ability to act as a redevelopment authority. Some would lead you to believe that by paying rent to the Redevelopment Authority, a public entity, we are in effect paying ourselves. This is misleading. and reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of what redevelopment authorities do. Redevelopment authorities have the unique ability to operate as a public real estate investor, using redevelopment proceeds to fund new redevelopment projects throughout the city. The revitalization of North Street, for example, couldn't have been done without the help of the FRA. The same goes for Riverfront Park. The FRA is a developer, not a property manager. So when we pay rents to the redevelopment authority, there are some added costs involved. Every dollar we pay the FRA is one less dollar of private funding to support redevelopment efforts in the city. In addition, we are occupying vital, high-quality commercial industrial space, which is in short supply downtown. I believe Dave Strepp mentioned that as well, because he knows he was in that job at one time. A higher and better use could produce jobs and tax revenue for our city. Further, our tenancy at 166 Boulder Drive serves as a barrier to the FRA selling Putnam Place, where our municipal offices are housed. Selling this facility should again be the primary goal of a redevelopment authority. That building represents over $130,000 in lost property tax revenue for every year it's owned by the FRA, and over $5 million in lost sales revenue over the last number of years. The FRA has been an important partner in supporting the city since 2011, but it is time to allow the Redevelopment Authority to return to what it does best, injecting funds into the redevelopment of our downtown. Leaving City Hall vacant has ripple effects on downtown investment. It affects nearby property values and tax revenues. There are costs to our police force, as vacant properties have been shown to increase crime and perceptions of it in the surrounding areas. It affects neighboring investment decisions. For the same reason you wouldn't buy a home next to a boarded-up house. Developers do not want to make investments next to a vacant city hall, a monument of decay in a downtown. And that's the last, less tangible, but maybe more important cost than anything else. City Hall has important symbolic value. It's been stated over and over again this evening. And we are sending the wrong signals. Old City Hall was built in a strategic way. The architects knew what they were doing. The sight lines work so you can see it all the way down Main Street, a symbol of strength and vitality for our downtown. Now is the time for the city to respond similarly and address the much-needed renovation of City Hall that will bring the municipality back to Main Street, the very center of our downtown, as our founding fathers originally envisioned. This outward statement that we believe in ourselves will propel Fitchburg forward in the 21st century. Many say, what's the plan for downtown? Let's talk about that. Vision 2020, our master plan for Fitchburg, has a series of long-term objectives. Land use is one. Its number one land use objective is to support downtown as a center for governmental and cultural activity for the city and as a location for community economic activity. I can't think of a better way to support downtown as a center for government than what we are doing with City Hall. One of its core objectives is to establish in-town Fitchburg as a successful, vibrant reflection of the community. It sets the goal to capitalize on the presence of Fitchburg State University, reestablishing a historic city building next to a $25 million university investment seems to fit the bill quite well. The plan also looks at natural, cultural, historic resources. One of its core goals here is to utilize the historic and architectural heritage of Fitchburg as a tool for economic development. That's exactly what we are doing here. Lastly, we have the goals for capital facilities. One of three objectives: to upgrade City Hall to meet the needs of the next century. That was stated. It is why one of FRA's three core goals is to revitalize Main Street. That's why they partnered with the college on North Street, building a connection between FSU and downtown. It's why they worked with our community development department on Riverfront Park. Coincidentally enough, their efforts to support Main Street have been put on hold as they've supported the city by acting as our landlord. As previously stated, is why the Reimagine North of Main partnership was formed. which has developed grants and policies to support small business on Main Street and conducted studies showing the viability of both the theater block and the B.F. Brown development, which, along with City Hall, could, as I mentioned earlier, represent a $75 million investment. It is why the city applied for and received a nationally competitive award from Smart Growth America, who, in their Next Steps memo, which will be released next week, recommends restoring the original function to the historic structure, developing a stronger community. Fitchburg's continuum from past into future is more authentically told when historic structures are once again used for their historic purpose. It's why our Community Development Department submitted an application to Mass Development designating the downtown area as a district for transformative development. It is why we are reinvesting in Main Street. Over the next 3 years, our Complete Streets prioritization process places over $1 million in streetscape improvements in and around Main Street. We've dedicated over $75,000 in community development block grant funding to Main Street business loans and have proposed $100,000 in the next year's proposal. It is why we are committed to moving City Hall back to Main Street. The time to sit back and wait is over. The building will only crumble further, and the effects on the perception of our city will grow worse. We are at an exciting moment with investment in the district at a level unseen before. There is a time and a place for planning, but let's finish what we started first. Do we want to sit around and plan, or do we want to take advantage of a unique opportunity to match the plans we've made with the commitment our city deserves? So suffice it to say, ladies and gentlemen, we've made those plans. To quote Peter Drucker, the founder of modern management, unless commitment is made, there are only promises and hopes, not plans. It's time to act, and that's now. Let me, in the school category, let me cite some of the improvements that have been made in my administration, but past ones as well. Crocker Elementary School burner. Crocker Elementary roof, $92,000. Fitchburg High School auditorium technology upgrades, $113,000. Memorial auditorium renovations, $172,000. The memorial paving, I don't have the figure on what we paid for that. That whole parking lot's brand new. Lighting upgrades at Rheingold, South Street burners, west roof at South Street retaining wall. It's been crumbling for years, $122,000. And IT infrastructure and wireless networks, $692,000. That's in my administration. There are far more. I'll leave this here, take a look at it, to the tune of $12 million. So the allegation that we're not investing in our school children is specious. It's inaccurate. It's not a fact. Again, come up and look at this. Also, we've placed solar panels on this school and on Rheingold as well. We're missing something here too, folks. Go to a school committee meeting once in a while. If you want to see what's really happening in our schools is the educational component that's happening that makes us second to none because we have so many challenges that some love to point out. But we address them and we meet them head on, and we're better than a lot of school districts in what we do. There are people that come to Fitchburg because of our school system. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for letting me share my thoughts. I appreciate it.
Councilors, we'll now proceed with the agenda. The next item before us, or the first item before us, rather, is 00818, Robert O'Brien and Stacy Fenton, and various residents whose signatures are attached to request that the council delay the vote on the $24 million bond issue until A, the newly elected city councilors can be fully briefed by Ellen Pagano and citizens who oppose the bond issue, and B, we received 3 public meetings with a 14-day notice in a large venue with adequate advertising, newspapers, city website, electronic road signs, etc., with both views given 30 to 40 minutes to present their case. The matter is now before the council.
Move 0018 be given leave to withdraw.
Second.
I have a motion and second to give 00818 leave to withdraw. Speaking to the motion, Councilor Squalia.
I do like the idea of being more fully briefed by the design firm. I do like that idea for new counselors. That's pretty much it for me.
Councilor Di Natale?
I have a question, and maybe the new counselors in this room can answer it for me. Were all new counselors in this room present on the November 15th public hearing?
Yes.
Do you have the study? Have you had the study? Just asking.
Yes.
Because the study was published publicly on November 2nd. We had a public hearing on the 15th. The public study was public for, as of today, 2.5 months. I'll let the new counselors speak if they're prepared or not, but this document has been available to the public now for almost 3 months. We had a public hearing on the 15th. We had another hearing 2 days ago. We had a hearing today, and if it goes through today, there will be at least 2 more hearings before this is finalized. We don't have to follow all this advertising jargon because there was a considerable number of people here tonight. Every meeting that we have, we post it on the website, we post it on social media, it's posted in the paper, it's posted outside the city clerk's office. There is no excuse for people not to know when we have meetings. None. And if the new counselors, as they just stated, were at the November 15th meeting and have access to the documentation that's been available since the 2nd of November, I don't see the need for this petition, from my point of view. But I'll let the new counselors see if they want to keep delaying it. Thank you.
Councilor Walsh.
Thank you. I did receive a copy of the study. I was present at the presentation at Kent Recital Hall, and I had asked and been granted a meeting with the mayor's office and Auditor Brooks and Mary Delaney, who answered all of my questions on that. I believe that I'll let Councilor Fleming speak for herself, but I believe that she was there as well. I feel very confident that I have all of the facts at hand, and I don't believe that I need a special meeting from the architect too.
Councilor Fleming.
I just want to echo what Councilor Walsh said. I don't think there's any more I can add to that.
That's it. I have a motion and second to give leave to withdraw to 00818. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 1 in opposition. Motion carries. Next, we'll have, before we deliberate on matters 00318 and 00418, I'd like to invite Chief Procurement Officer Mary Delaney and City Auditor Calvin Brooks. Councilors, between the number of public comments provided this evening as well as the mayor's information, I've asked them to give us a slightly abridged version. However, they're available for any questions from any of you should you need them to dive into further detail. You have the floor.
Good evening. I'm going to start. All of the slides that we have this evening have been provided to everyone on the City Council. So as requested, I don't want this story of City Hall to become a bedtime story. So I'm going to move along fairly quickly. If there is anything that you want to interrupt Mr. Brooks and I on, please feel free. I'm going to skip up to the warning signs, which is a few slides in. In 2003, Hang Associates completed a comprehensive study. They took a look at City Hall then. There were problems in 2003 that were starting to cause people to be very concerned. So there were 5 options discussed, and those options ranged between, I guess, a low of about a little over $4 million to $8.5 million. At the end of that study, there was actually no action taken on any of the recommendations. I wasn't here at that time, but I understand the city was under some financial constraints, and so nothing happened at that time. So the building continued to deteriorate. There were code violations, there were accessibility issues, and there were structural issues that remained unresolved at that time. So we fast forward to 2012. And in 2012, in August of 2012, Mayor Wong established a City Hall subcommittee. And that subcommittee was to make recommendations on the future of City Hall. Again, everyone was aware that there was deterioration in the building and, was thinking that action needed to be taken. Very shortly after establishing the committee, the City Hall Roof Truss was declared failed. And so vacating the building was the only option at that time. So arrangements were made for a lease and renovations at 166 Boulder Drive, and that was a temporary measure to house the central operations, which began in October 2012. At the same time, other operations that couldn't fit into Boulder Drive were moved in various places around the city, where most of them remain till today. Putnam Place was supposed to be a temporary solution, so core services were located at Putnam Place, which is on Boulder Drive, and the plan was always to move along from there. So in 2014, the City Hall Subcommittee presented their findings. They had reviewed 3 sites: City Hall Main Street, 166 Boulder Drive, where they already were, and the Rollstone Bank. There were 9 options considered by that subcommittee, and you all see on your slide what those options were. And the subcommittee's recommendation by unanimous vote was to recommend the original City Hall building be renovated and used as the home of municipal government in Fitchburg. Again, nothing happened at that time. So we're fast forwarding. We're fast forwarding to the new administration. So in 2016, right after Mayor DiNatale came into office, he instructed the staff to begin looking at 718 Main Street. In the months that, in the beginning of the months of his administration, there were some tasks that were completed that had been left undone with the swift departure from City Hall in 2012, and that was to basically clean out City Hall, to move out all the files that had remained behind, to get rid of any furniture that was laying around, and to just do a basic cleanup. So we had an auction and cleaned the building out, but also at the same time did some hazardous materials inspections to see what we'd be dealing with there. Also in 2016, we were exploring other options. We issued an RFP to try to purchase a property. We wanted to see if there was anything available in the city that would work for City Hall. So a solicitation was issued for a property on Main Street, and no proposals were received in the May 2016 procurement. Then in June of 2016, we revised the proposal, sent it back out. We restructured and updated the solicitation, issued a new request for proposals, and we did a lot of outreach. We spoke to real estate agents, we published it everywhere, we identified certain parties we thought might be interested in selling us property, and 2 proposals were received at that time. One proposal was not acceptable because it didn't meet any of the basic requirements of the bid. It just wasn't going to meet the criteria for a public building project. And then one proposal was accepted, but we did do a site visit, and we established that the property would not be suited for municipal building for a number of reasons. Left us back to not really knowing where to go from there. So in 2017, Mayor DiNatale established a building committee, and I would like to just mention the names of those people because a lot of work that they did is reflected in this report tonight. Council President Mike Kushmarek is on the committee. Acting then as the City Councilor at Large was Tom Donnelly. Commissioner of Public Works Lenny Laxo. City Assessor Ken Wilson. Mark Barbadoro, the City Building Commissioner. A.J. Turigny, the Chief of Staff. Phil McSheehy, the citizen representative, Phil Esposito, a business representative, Ellen DiGeronimo, who's a representative from the Historical Commission, and Jay Bry, the Vice President of Finance and Administration from Fitchburg State University. At that time, we entered the feasibility study stage. We sent out for proposals, and the committee decided to award the contract to Lamro Pagano. Lamro Pagano had a great deal of experience in historic buildings, and they began their work for the city in March of 2017. Also in 2017, we had an unexpected opportunity that came up when the Bank of America building became available. And the mayor approached the bank to inquire about donating that to the city, which they did, and we officially obtained that building in August of 2017. On June 2nd of 2017, the City Hall Building Committee unanimously approved option 1 as presented by Lamro Pagano. There were 5 options presented. The 5th option was to keep the facade of the building, and there was a kind of an asterisk added to that, a cost for a completely new building, which is we call 5A. The reason that the committee suggested option 1 is because it was a conservative approach to the project. It made the major interior renovations that were needed to make the building usable, make the spaces more accessible to the public. It had community-style offices. It had an interactive counter approach, which is something that people really like about the current setup, being able to go up to a counter. And it had a vision for some outdoor spaces as well. That happened to be the least expensive option, but we felt that the option worked. The feasibility study was distributed to the City Council, to the press, to members of the community, and a public presentation was given on November 15th. And at this point, the council will need to deliberate and vote on money orders to fund the project before anything moves forward. So we have 2 roads that we can take at this point. I'm going to stop with the PowerPoint and just kind of go through quickly. We can end the story here. We can end the story and start writing a sequel, or we can start to write new chapters for the story at Main Street. That's a choice that's before you this evening. Writing a sequel means that we have to figure out what's happening at Boulder Drive. Let's not forget that there are costs associated with whatever happens at Boulder Drive. If we were to stay and an expansion was discussed, there would be costs associated with that, in as much as a feasibility study, design and construction, and all of the things that go along with that. And there still wouldn't be a space for city council chamber, meeting rooms. Storage would be a great problem at that point. And it would also, it would affect the parking situation on Boulder Drive. If we were to not go back to City Hall on Main Street, other costs associated would be, what are we doing with the City Hall building itself? There would have to be some work done to either seal it up and maintain it for however long as an empty building, or we'd have to demolish the building, which would incur costs for asbestos removal, demolition, and site work. So let's talk about writing the new chapters to the story and returning city operations back to Main Street. In order to continue, again, we need the vote of the City Council. Once that happens, then the city is required to hire an owner's project manager. From there, we would have to procure a design and architectural firm. And then after that, we would have to go out to bid. This is not a short timeline. This is an extended timeline. I had provided all of you with the options that Lamro and Pagano had given us. If anyone has any questions when I'm done speaking and they want to talk about any of those options, feel free to ask. I'm going to move forward into just talking about cost estimates, because that is something that people ask a lot of questions about. The cost estimate that we got from Lamro Pagano and their cost estimating team includes a healthy contingency. The contingency will cover any unknowns in construction. the building committee decided and were adamant that that would be a higher percentage, leaning on the conservative side, knowing that it's an old building, decided to put a little bit more contingency money aside to be prepared for anything unknown. Also, there's a different type of construction that can happen, which, you know, the mayor and I have spoken about at length, which is a 149A. And that would mean that we could actually do a phased project where we could start with demolishing the interior as the first phase, exposing all of the things that may go wrong at that point, and designing as we go through the demolition, which means that we're not doing all the design work, going in, ripping things out, and then finding out that we have a problem. We can be proactive, we can apply for this other method of delivery, and hopefully do the demolition first and know where we stand. That's called a construction manager at risk procedure, and we do feel that that would also fall within the budget. At this point, I think I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Brooks, because I think everyone really wants to talk about money, and so I'm going to have Calvin talk about that.
Thank you. I have just handed out one sheet, and it's the cream-colored paper. This is the same spreadsheet that I had handed out at the presentation back on November 15th, which basically looks at how we're doing it. Before you, councilors, are two money orders. Money order for $1 million out of available funds, and $22.5 million is a loan order. That the total cost of the project is $23.5 million. The reason it's split between the two is that if we do have some available funds, and using $1 million of available funds will allow us to start the project right away without having to borrow money this fiscal year. It'll buy us a year in terms of borrowing, which means we can delay 1 year the beginning of our payback of the loan, and that just helps from a budgetary standpoint. If you look at the spreadsheet, the first column is our current debt service. That's what our budgeted debt service is. However, because part of the debt is the Fitchburg High School, we're getting reimbursements from the Mass School Building Authority. That needs to be subtracted out, because when we stop paying off that debt, we stop getting that subsidy. So the current net debt is what the budget, the impact is of debt service on our current budget. There are two projects that are currently in process, and that debt has to be considered. That's $900,000 for the parking garage and $500,000 for airport renovation, specifically to the terminal and to Hangar 7. What we would be adding is new debt, $22.5 million for the renovation of City Hall, the $12 million for the Crocker School. That's assuming it's a $60 million project with a 80% reimbursement from the Mass School Building Authority. So our net cost is $12 million. And $6 million that was committed to the library. If I add that projected debt together to get the projected debt service, you can see that our debt starts off at $2.3 million, and then it goes down before it jumps up to $3.7 million. So one of the things I'm proposing to smooth that process is some budgeted capital spending, whereby we increase the budget each year about $350,000, sending that money to specifically to capital spending, so that the net impact on the budget has a gradual increase to get it up to where we need to be. Even at $3.7 million, the debt service should not be onerous for a budget of our size, and really is an indication in the bond markets and so on that we're reinvesting in ourselves and in our own buildings and so on. Some people have questioned whether there's going to be an impact on the tax levy. My answer to that would be no, that we're not doing this as an override or as a debt exclusion. So while the taxes will be going up, they'll be going up by what is common for the past, 40 years. which is 2.5% plus new growth. That's what our levy will be going up. And so the discussion will not be how much are we raising taxes, but how are we spending that tax increase? Where is it being directed? Is it being directed toward salaries and current costs, or is it being directed toward longer-term needs, which is what the debt service is recognizing? In looking at future projects, there is some room within this projection for future projects. The first item that's come up quite frequently in the last month or two has been the Longjo School roof. I understand the school department is doing a study right now to figure out what needs to be done and what the cost would be. At this point, if it's a $2 million cost, we should be able to we would do that by doing a loan order for $2 million and then using the budgeted capital spending to basically reduce that loan order $1 million each year over the course of the next couple of years and pay that off. The library has come up for discussion. My understanding on the library is that it's a $31 million project. The state has given us a grant of $12 million. The city has committed to $6 million, and that was the commitment on the original application. So there's a $13 million shortfall, which the library feels they can, the library trustees have to address. $3 million of that will be through fundraising, and there's still a $10 million gap that they're looking at addressing. And they have, in talking with the library director, there are some ideas they have that they're pursuing. It's not something we have to settle today because the state library commissioners are 2 to 3 years out before they will give us a final okay on our grant, and we'll have to make a decision then on whether we're going forward with the whole project or not. So the library trustees have a few years to work on this $10 million funding gap. The other item that's come up is the other schools that I've heard. Anything we do with schools on a major basis, we want to get Mass School Building Authority funding because that's an 80% reimbursement. And so we need that. We're in the process with MSBA with the Crocker School. That's a few years before we get to an end point. And MSBA is not interested in really hearing from us until we're further along on Crocker. So we could be looking 5 years out before we really get involved in the next project. And if in doing a little looking at this calculation, in 5 years out, we will have paid off about $3.5 million of this debt that we're accumulating. 10 years out, we would have paid off about $13.5 million, and that would probably be about when we would be incurring permanent debt on a second school project. And I really think that's the way you have to look at it. I've been practicing different pitches on different people, and one of the analogies I've used is filling potholes. And if you're going onto a street to fill potholes, you don't fill all the potholes at once. You do them one at a time, and you work your way down the street. And I think that's how we have to look at this. We're addressing an issue with City Hall. We're addressing an issue with Crocker School. We're going to address Longjo School roof. The next issue is the library. And after that, we'll be going back to look at another school and seeing what has to be done. As I've said, I think that this project is affordable within the city budget. As Mary alluded to, there are costs to saying, no, we don't want to do the City Hall renovation, and that needs to be acknowledged. My quick estimate is that if we did a build-out at 166 Boulder Drive to convert the current storage space into additional office space to get us some meeting space that we need and to rearrange some of the office space, we're looking at a $2 million cost to that. And then we have to look at the building at 718 Main. If we're not going to do any renovation at this time, we have a choice of either demoing the building, and I'm throwing out a number of $1 million. That might be high, but I think that's a starting point to say, all right, there is a cost to demoing the building. If we want to hold on to the building so that in a couple of years or 5 years, we could do something. At a minimum, we have to get rid of the hazardous waste that's in there so that if anything does happen to the building, we don't have a serious cost. And we need to do something with the slates that are falling off the roof, which means we need to replace the roof. And if we replace the roof, we need to fix the trusses. So you could be looking at a couple of $1 million just to redo the roof. And that would be nothing more than replacing the roof and then leaving the rest of the building as is. So as I say, I think the project that's being proposed is affordable and can be worked within our budgets. Thank you.
So we have two orders. I'll read these orders, and then councilors can both deliberate as well as ask questions. So 00318 before us, ordered that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $1 million, same to be charged against available funds and credited to capital projects, City Hall renovation project. And 00418 ordered that $22,500,000 be appropriated to pay cost of renovating, reconstructing, and making extraordinary repairs and equipping the City Hall, the existing City Hall building, 718 Main Street, and the Bank of America building, 700 Main Street, as outlined in the enclosed order. The orders are now before the council. Councilor Caddy. Sorry.
I just want to ask the question on 00318. You said it earlier, but I just want to have you answer the question again. We're not borrowing this $1 million. It's coming out of our free cash.
The $1 million would be coming out of free cash, yes.
Councilor Di Natale.
I just didn't know if we needed a motion.
Councilor Di Natale.
Motion to grant 00318.
Second.
And 00418.
I have a motion and second to grant 003 and 00418.
Second.
Second. Speaking to the motion, Councilor Boschman.
Can I ask Calvin
You
a
may.
question? Calvin, we're renting Boulder Drive. A cost of what, you told me, about $165,000 a year?
It's actually, I probably told you 165. I think it's actually costing us about 185.
$185,000 a year? All right. So we would be not saving, but if we moved over to the new City Hall, we would save in approximately that much money, or it would be wash, would it come out the same with the payment?
When I've looked at it, I've looked at heat, electric, lease, cleaning, insurance, because we have to insure the vacant building that's there now. And I figure we have a cost of about $275,000 a year that we're currently paying for those items. Making an estimate as to what the heat and electric would be at a new building, and I've assumed adding 2 custodians for maintenance of the building, and that would be about $210,000. So there's in terms of our operating costs, there's a little bit of a savings, not appreciable.
Councilor Squalia.
For the build-out, for the quick estimate of $2 million, and for the quick estimate of the $1 million to demo the old City Hall, but we don't actually have a feasibility study on that.
Nope.
We just have a quick estimate. That's what we're basing our decision on for those aspects, for those figures.
Correct.
There was no feasibility study done for the demolition cost of Old City Hall. And there was no feasibility study done for the build-out cost at Boulder Drive, correct?
Correct. The $2 million estimate is based on 6,150 square feet, and I took a build out of $190 per square foot, I think, or $200 per square foot, which is roughly what's in the feasibility study for City Hall. And then I think I added 40% for the overhead costs, and another 4% for that it would be a year from now. And then I think that came out to about $1.8 million, and then I threw in a little more just to be sure we were covered.
Does any of that take into account the years of deferred rent or forgiven rent for from the FRA to the city for the build-out that was supposed to occur in that storage space?
Okay, no, it doesn't take account for that because we already have benefited from that. That's already been accounted for.
So that's just like opportunity.
And then on the $1 million for City Hall, I've been trying to get estimates on that. The steam plant was about $500,000, and that's kind of where I had started with an estimate. But as I've talked to more people, they keep bumping it up a little bit for various reasons. $1 million is the number that's been kind of bandied about.
But that's an unofficial number with no study done, with no actual cost estimate.
Correct.
It's just
Correct. I think if we were to decide to demo it, I would recommend that we do $1 million appropriation for the cost of demolition. Hopefully, the cost would come in less, and then whatever money's left just closes out to free cash at the end of the year.
Is there a reason there was no feasibility study done, included with our feasibility study for renovating the old City Hall? We had the feasibility study for renovating it, but there was no other options included. It was really just renovating City Hall, that's the only plan.
That was what the building committee was tasked with.
So it wasn't really a comprehensive plan, it was a strategic plan only with one goal in mind, and that is to rebuild the old City Hall.
Councilor Di Natale.
Back in March of 2017, the mayor submitted a $90,000 order out of free cash for a feasibility study of 718 Main Street. We had three meetings that the public could speak at. No one did. It was communicated at that meeting by the administration. We had a choice. From his office through the Building Needs Committee, they wanted to stay at 718 Main Street. So we were either going to do a study at 718 Main Street or a study at 166. And because of the recommendation and because of the mayor's own personal preference, the order was submitted to the council for the feasibility study at 718 only. If the council wanted to do both studies, we could have requested that. The council voted to stick with 718 based on the recommendations. It's been known for a year up to this point that was the goal of this council, of the committee, and of the mayor. So we did not find it necessary to spend more taxpayer money on feasibility studies for a location that we already agreed we didn't find to meet standards for what we require. That is why we did the study on 718. It wasn't because we didn't care to know what the costs were. It's because that was the position we all took at that time to say, yes, we want to know what the costs are at 718. And then in June, Bank of America came before us. The mayor said at those three meetings that we had, again, nobody from the public participated, that this was going to serve as an addendum to the City Hall project. And the council, by a unanimous vote, took the building. Just like the council, by a 10-to-1 vote, voted for the study on 718. No one said, let's stay at 166. Former Mayor Wong said 166 is not where we need to be. I have had to hear for the last several months from certain individuals from the financial side that this is going to bankrupt the city. I try to explain to people, and when I do, they fully understand at that point. Say you have a car payment, let's say it's $300 a month, and your budget is maxed out with that car payment. You make the payments on the car every year, and then when the car is paid off, you've got $300 that you don't know what to do with. Some people say, well, I'll buy another car. That's what the city of Fitchburg has done since the start of time. That's what all municipalities do. You have debt service in your budget that services certain projects, and after a period of time when they're paid off, you take out new ones. There's no budgetary impact. Where there would be a budgetary impact is if we exceed what our limit is. The state of Massachusetts, per the law, says the city of Fitchburg can borrow $75 million. We've never even come close to that number because to do so would bankrupt the city. I have a credit card that has a limit on it. I don't go up to that limit because I can. I do what I can afford. So in finance, there's a difference between debt affordability and debt capacity. Our capacity is $75 million, but we'd be foolish to do that. We do about $40 to $45 million. That's what we've budgeted for the last 30 years. So the statements out there that this is going to bankrupt the city are complete fallacy, with no basis in fact. Some individuals seem to discount the fact that we have been saying since day one that City Hall is only consuming about half of our debt affordability. There's Crocker, there's the library, there's Longsjo Roof. There are school projects being done in conjunction with this. Whether City Hall happens or not, there will be a new school at Crocker Elementary in the foreseeable future. Maybe even 2 new schools if we go K through 8. Someone said to me, use that $22.5 million to plow it into Longsjo. My counter to them is, would you spend $22.5 million at Longsjo, which needs $50 million, if you know in 7 years the potential you're going to close the school? I don't know. It's a potential. We haven't decided that yet. But what we have talked about and what has been committed to the council is the biggest problem at Longsjo, that roof, is going to be addressed this year when previous administrations punted the ball. And I never heard anybody say anything during those times. So the roof at Longsjo is going to get taken care of. We're going to get a new school, maybe 2 new schools, and City Hall. Again, whether we do the project or not, those things are going to get done. To fix all of our schools in Fitchburg, let's say we don't go through MSBA. It would cost the equivalent of 10 to 15 city halls. No city in this state pays 100% for a new school building because their debt affordability can't afford it. Lamo and Pagano said in 2016 that Longsjo needs $50 million. Our debt affordability is $40 million. We can't fix an entire school on our own. We need the state's help. The last thing I'll say on this subject is I've been hearing people say incorrectly that we are throwing the library to the wolves. I went back a few weeks ago and I watched the December 20th, 2016 committee, full council meeting on FATV, where Ms. Bernard, the library trustees, and the architects were before this council. Throughout their entire presentation, they kept stating, this may not happen, this may not happen, we don't know what's going to happen, we've got to apply. Wouldn't hurt to apply. We don't know if it'll happen. Over and over again. Myself and former Councilor Joseph were the ones who asked the library, with City Hall coming down the pike and Crocker and everything else, how are we going to afford $19 million for the library? When you take the $31 million minus the 12, $19 million would be the city's share, let's say, if there was no fundraising, no other money. Ms. Bernard and the architectural firm at that hearing testified that if this project doesn't happen, they will need at least 1/3 of that to take care of all the major issues at the current facility. 1/3 of $19 million is $6 to $8 million. And as Mr. Brooks said, when we submitted the application, we said $6 million at that time. And at no time in that meeting did any councilor, the mayor, anybody in the city say to the library, whatever the state gives you, we'll cover the difference. We've never said that. We would like to have that project go forward, but if City Hall goes forward, the library at a minimum is going to get all the money they have said they will need to fix the current facility. So the library is not being kicked down the road. I've been in finance for 14 years, and I know a thing or two about debt service. Debt is a good thing to have on this community if you can manage it, and we have managed it. We have spent over $12 million on our school building since 2009. I heard on Tuesday some anti-City Hall advocates say, well, you really only spent 4.6. They totally negate the 7.6 from the state. Why? Because it fits their narrative. How did we get that $7.6 million from the state? Did the state wake up one day and say, hey, Fitchburg, we're sitting on 7.6 million, you want it? We had to ask for it. And it was a lengthy, laborious process. So you can't discount it. And that 4.6 million we spent, ladies and gentlemen, when did we spend most of that money? In 2009, 2010, 11, and 12, when we were in the worst economic recession in this city, where we shuttered the library 2/3 of the week, we shut down most of the street lights, and we laid off public safety personnel, but we still were able, from the city side, to give the schools $4.5 million for building needs. We've replaced roofs, we replaced boilers, windows, lighting, all things that the media, unsurprisingly, doesn't report, and things the anti-City Hall crowd doesn't care to hear. So, are we where we want to be with our schools? No. No one's ever said we're satisfied with our school building conditions. But the worst issue at Longshore will be addressed. Crocker will be brand new in a few years. And we are still going to be investing here and there in our other school buildings. No one talks about the fact that we spent $200,000 last fiscal year to renovate all of Memorial Middle School auditorium, which looks gorgeous now. We could have taken that money and paved roads with it. We gave it to the schools. Our budget is 51% for the schools. So I have the utmost confidence as a finance professional in the private sector that this is affordable. The question for me was never whether it's affordable, it's whether we want to do it as a council. Do we find it necessary to do? And unfortunately, the schools have been pitted against the City Hall as if it's a one or the other, and from day one, that's never been the case. So please, ladies and gentlemen, get the facts first before you believe what you read. Thank you very much.
Councilor Caddy.
This is not a financial question. I can wait if someone does have a financial question before me. So, I guess I'll be real short. We heard from the college tonight. We heard from Newview with B.F. Brown. We heard from Micron Products with 2 of their projects. They're gonna, in our City Hall project, we're gonna fill some pretty big voids in the city. But if you look down Main Street, there are still buildings that are empty. So my question to the council is, if we vote against the renovation of City Hall, what are we telling those people who own those buildings? What are we saying to them? We're telling them, we can't invest in our Main Street, but we expect you to continue to pay your taxes, and we expect you to develop your properties. That's the worst message that I can think of for Main Street. We have to step up. This is a project that we have to do, we have to be proud of, and we have to encourage other developers to come to our Main Street. Thank you.
Councilor Green.
First of all, I would like to say that it was a welcome surprise to have the public portion of our forum conducted in such a civil manner, and I do appreciate that from everyone that spoke, that they handled themselves as kind humans. We have done our due diligence as counselors with this project from the very beginning. With this project, we have shown accountability, and by that, promoting financial self-assessment as we manage this project. We have been visible in the use of public funds. We have done this by informing local government association and citizens about this project. We've used prioritization. We've encouraged financial municipal departments, asset management, urban and strategic planning to work together on capital investment plans securely anchored in financial feasibility. We've been efficient and transparent. We act on a set of key initiatives to improve mobilization of local resources and rationalize public expenditures. We've shown access to external funding. We agree on a common set of concepts and methodologies for a funding source. With this, we have secured. I ask that you educate yourselves other than Facebook as your source for that education as we move forward with this project.
Counselor Squalia.
Regarding the library and regarding investing in our buildings on Main Street, I was at the library trustees meeting last night, and I was informed of the figures that needed for the library. So 19 million is the city's portion for the estimated state grant of the estimated total construction for $31.5 million, something like that. And so with the city committing to 6 million, that brings the needed total to 13 million. The library trustees estimate that they can reasonably fundraise for $3.5 million of that. That leaves $9.5 million funding shortfall for our library expansion, the images that we've all seen of the expansion and the renovation, which that plan is needed in order to qualify for the library grant. And so at $9.5 million funding shortfall, with the estimated grant availability in 2 to 5 years, that $9.5 million, that really falls on the city of Fitchburg in order to fund that library within the 2 to 5 years. Now, if we cannot afford that $9.5 million in 2 to 5 years, then the other option that was given is a library renovation, which does not include the addition or the community spaces, just a straight renovation of the existing building. So the straight renovation existing building estimate is $12 million. So the city has already committed $6 million of that, which leaves the city on the hook for $6 million more in 2 to 5 years if it's determined that we can't afford the $9.5 million portion after the $3.5 million that's estimated for the library to be able to fundraise. So either way, in 2 to 5 years, if we want to fix our library and invest in another building on Main Street that's our community center, we're going to either need $6 million or $9.5 million for the full renovation. And just bringing up, rehashing numbers, we're talking about the actual money that Fitchburg has spent on capital improvements to schools. From 2009 to 2017, that's $4.5 million the city has invested to all its school buildings. Whereas we're talking about right now, $24 million or $23.5 million in 1 year for one municipal building. That's what, 8 years, $4.5 million to a number of schools in the city of Fitchburg. And right now we're proposing $23.5 million for one building for municipal use, not for school use. So a major concern of mine is the efficient and strategic spending of our available debt service capacity. The proposed city borrowing of $23.5 million without any consideration of grant funding, that's over 50% of our debt service capacity, planning through the year 2045. Putting this much money into almost any building will have a direct economic impact to that surrounding area. So how do we decide where to leverage our borrowing capacity? The proposal right now is a plan that maxes out our debt service capacity without any strategic plan. Our Vision 2020 strategic plan is expiring. By 2040, we're planning on 2045 for our debt service capacity, but our Vision 2020 plan is 25 years before that. We have no updated strategic plan in place. We have no economic development strategy plan in place. We don't even have the results of our Smart Growth America technical assistance recommendations other than what I've heard tonight. We haven't seen it. It hasn't come out. It doesn't come out till next week, correct? So we don't even have those results. We don't even have a list of capital needs from the city of Fitchburg. We don't even have an objective list of the city's infrastructure and maintenance needs before we plan on spending our entire debt service capacity on these 3 projects. We don't even have the list of our needs. So where should we spend our money to have the largest economic impact? Our only plans are anecdotal. We have no actual data at this time. What purpose will there be for strategic planning if we've already maximized our spending capability prior to even knowing where the most efficient use of our funds should be spent? On the subject of strategic plans, in 2013, we actually did a downtown Fitchburg strategic plan commissioned by the city, completed by Harvard University, which suggested the transfer of Old City Hall to a private entity in conjunction with the historic tax credits from the National Historic District overlay, which is going on at the Upper Common, which is currently in the process. It demonstrated a positive net present result for redevelopment of Old City Hall as condos, as a hotel, or as apartment rental units. Transference of this building to a private entity would reduce construction cost, and in conjunction with an Upper Common National Historic District designation has been shown, per our own commissioned study, to have a positive financial analysis. So I ask, why are we rushing this proposal without any larger plan for the city in place? Why don't we look at our capital needs, develop an objective plan that most efficiently spends the little resources that we have to help guide us? I would like to see this matter held for consideration, pending the results of an inclusive capital needs survey for the city of Fitchburg, which should be an objective list of the city's current infrastructure and maintenance needs, an economic development plan in conjunction with a newly updated strategic development plan, and the Upper Common Historic District designation, which could allow for tax credits to the renovations of the building within its district. And I'm not sure if it could allow for tax credits to our old City Hall, even if we did decide to renovate it as a municipal structure. Fitchburg's taxpayers deserve to know that we are spending their money wisely with a strategic plan in place. Fitchburg's taxpayers deserve to know that we are not gambling $24 million on our downtown economic development on this one project. Fitchburg's taxpayers deserve to know that we are not neglecting our schools, that we are not neglecting our library, that we're not neglecting our pension or OPEB fund, and that we're not neglecting our roads. There's no cause to rush to spend all our available debt service capacity today. Let's keep this option as a consideration while we develop an actual plan. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
I have a question. Mr. President, did the Capital Improvements Commission endorse this project?
Yes, I did. Mr. Brooks can confirm that.
Mr. Brooks, does the Capital Improvements Commission meet on a regular basis and discuss projects in the pipeline and what we need to do as capital needs in this city?
We've been meeting on an as-needs basis. The commission has discussed the need for meeting on a more regular basis in order to more fully develop a better capital plan than what we've been doing.
But the Capital Improvements Commission endorsed this project, did they not?
It did, yes.
Again, I want to reiterate to the public, just for their own edification, because there's scare tactics being employed here, that if we go forward with all these projects, we're in financial peril. We are not going to be in financial peril. And you could make a listing of all the needs we have in this city as a community. Every single one of us on this council has priorities. The mayor has priorities. We could debate for months what we think is more important than something else. We just heard that there are plans in place. We just heard that there's strategies being employed. I don't know what more it takes for people to say that until it sinks in. I'm sure Tom Skoworski and Mary Jo Barhart would disagree with that entirely, and they're the subject matter experts. How do I know that? Because they've told us before that there are plans in place. You know, people need to understand we are not doing this with a veil over our eyes. We've been discussing this for 7 years. We did the same exact thing we're doing tonight that we did in 1999. We spent our limit on a new high school, a new fire station, and those two projects are being paid off next year, which allows us to do these projects. And I get conflicting testimony. Do we want to spend all of our capacity on the library? What happened to the school argument? You know, pick your poison. The testimony on December 20th of 2016 was we need a third of the $19 million to fix all the problems in the schools. That came from the architects. And Ms. Bernard said $5 to $10 million. So do people want us to give the library $7 or $8 million at the worst to fix every issue in that building? Or do they want that to go to the schools? You see, we're playing games here. This is an example of a plan, okay? There are people who want the library fixed. There are people who want the schools fixed. There are people who want City Hall fixed. The only plan that matters, and I hate to say this, I said this on the Lisa Wong too, The only plan that matters when it comes to capital expenditures is who's sitting in that chair. And then we have to decide if we agree with him or her on the use of those funds. You can have a plan up the wazoo. It's not going to matter because everyone has their own priorities. We developed plans for the revitalization of downtown Main Street for decades, and they sat on a shelf collecting dust. So I've heard testimony that there are active plans in place. Do we believe the people who are doing the work, or do we believe other people who say there isn't a plan, who are not doing the work? So I just want the public to understand, please, we are not neglecting the library. The library made it clear on day one, this project was not a guarantee. And none of us in this room at the time committed to them that it would be. Thank you.
So I'll take an opportunity and echo the same sentiments. We have a capital improvement commission that meets regularly. They talk about city needs. They talk about, the recurring items that are before the city. They voted on this matter, knowing full well the whole list of items that lie before the city that need to be addressed, from public infrastructure to public buildings. And they agreed with the assessment that we need to move forward with this. The idea that we've rushed this, I think, is a false claim. We've been talking about this for almost 7 years now, spanning 2 different administrations, spanning 2 very different administrations that have led the city in different ways. So with commissions and boards, committees, and councils comprised of individuals appointed by mayors spanning not just 2 administrations, but spanning decades. Some of the folks that have been on these commissions, that we heard from this evening, have served this city for 20 years, spanning 5 or 6 mayors. And they've agreed with this assessment. This hasn't been rushed. This has been thoroughly vetted at every opportunity, both in the public and with every board, commission, and thought leader that we have in this city, using every resource, including outside ones and consultants. So look at what's to gain from doing this. You can go through it, and we belabor the economic development aspect of it today, of which we're also working on an economic development plan. I know Mary Jo Bohart has been meeting with several key groups, moving towards that next vision plan for this city and the next strategic plan for economic development in this city, which has not been neglected or ignored, but rather we're moving fairly expeditiously towards those plans and engaging wide swaths of the community and different representatives. But beyond that, we gain a functional City Hall campus, state-compliant storage to ensure that storage isn't, at drastically low temperatures or in moist humidity. And if you laugh about it and you say, we're talking about storage, we barely meet, and in fact, I would argue we don't meet the state-compliant restrictions for maintaining our documents. Historical documents that span 200 years of the city, or those that are very concerned about transparency and open meeting, those documents that are as recent as last year, birth and death records. So we gain access to much needed storage and access for our city clerk and elections offices to be able to maintain records to state standards, gain meeting space for community. But more than anything, I'd say we gain a more efficient workspace. We've talked a lot about efficiency and what makes the most business sense. We heard from a lot of business owners who were in here this evening. They wouldn't conduct themselves in a business out of a business like us, a 500 employee enterprise out of a warehouse. That's not efficient from a workspace standpoint. I'd say we actually lose dollars in terms of our man hours, in terms of the lack of efficiency, the time spent traveling between different offices, spaces on campus, the constant need to rework and find meeting space. It's a travesty that, in order for myself and my capacity to meet with the city clerk, an official capacity on a private matter, we often have to either wait until after hours until everyone's left in order to use our current City Hall, or we've got to go outside of City Hall in order to find space to meet. And that's for just one single instance. And you multiply that across department heads, and meetings across the city, and we say, is that efficient? Is that really how you want your government operating? I would say probably not. Is that something you could be proud of? Are we operating like a business? Are we operating and making the most and maximizing your dollars? I also look at opportunity costs here. I look at, yes, what is the cost of rent that we don't have to be paying the FRA? I also look at it and say, what is the cost that the FRA is losing by renting the space to us when they could be renting, maximum premier space to an outside entity? And really being able to, we're getting the hometown discount for using that space, but what could they be charging to an outside entity? What are the tax dollars that could be coming into the city as a result? It was said before, Councilor Caddy, I thought, said this, and I'm circling my note here as he said it, but it's how can we ask others to invest in Main Street if we ourselves are unwilling to do so? We spent the better part of a decade, we talk about plans, the better part of a decade selling this city and saying Main Street is core to who we are. It is a part of who we are, and that's where we see our future. We've invested millions, tens of millions of dollars of our own. Private investment and public investment from other entities other than the state have invested, additional tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars over the past decade on Main Street. So you talk about inefficiency. If we're going to start turning our back on Main Street, that would be, number one on the list of inefficiencies. All of those moves have brought us to this moment. This is the next logical step of Main Street, of bringing our city hall back and saying to our businesses and those who have invested and those who will invest that we're here. This is who we are. This is where the future of our downtown is. This is where the future of economic growth and development efforts will be. For that reason, both these orders and City Hall has my support. Councilor Squalia.
For clarification, when we bring up the Capital Improvement Commission and their vote for this project, the Capital Improvement Commission, I attended the most recent meetings, 2 in the last year. They requested a list of capital needs from the city. No list was provided. The Capital Improvement Commission does not have a list. They did not have a list working with the needs, the maintenance needs, or the infrastructure needs of the city in order to make this vote. It was indicated to them that they needed to make this vote now, otherwise the City Hall would cost more money, and no one wants to spend more money. So that's the information that they were given at the time. And in addition, when we talk about an economic development strategy plan in place, trusting the people, even President Kushmarek said himself, they are working on an economic development plan. We're working on plans, but we don't have the plan. So right now, we're proposing to spend all this money before we have the plan, just to clarify.
I have a motion and a second on the floor, and no one else on the speakers list. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? One in opposition. Motion carries. 003 and 004, 18 have passed.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.